very much. I feel like you may have pumped me up a little bit too much, but I guess we'll let everybody else figure it out later.
I held back, dude. I held back. I knew how great this was going to be.
Well, I think it's funny because my business partner, Jeff, is on this call. So he wasn't too happy that you told everybody that there he is. He's putting stuff in the chat already. He's going to be heckling me all night. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. And I
didn't see that. Sorry about that, Jeff.
So real quick, I mean, I appreciate the introduction. I appreciate Adrian and you asking me to come on and speak. I really, for anybody that's willing and able, I'd love for you to turn your videos on because I love speaking to people, but looking at your names kind of sucks. Just being real blunt. If you don't have clothes on, feel free to keep your, screen off. And I'm seeing some familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while. JR, I haven't seen you in a long time. And just Susan, I haven't seen you in a long time, but I just really appreciate you having me on. The other part of this, as Liz said, there's no good time or bad time to ask a question. So stop me. I have zero agenda tonight. We'll get as far as we get, but I want everybody to get any answers, or any questions answered that they have. And I'm not planning on going anywhere. So the meeting after the meeting, I'm available for as long as you want me, Liz. All right.
Now that we're going to hold you to. All right. Thank you.
That's all right. But I am channeling my inner John Heyer and having a little bourbon while I do this. So I'm very informal.
Cheers.
Just saying. So Adrian knows how informal I can be. But so I'll give you all just a quick background. I won't take up a whole lot of our time, but Liz remembered very well our conversation of my history, and it was really painful in 2007, 8, and 9, watching what we built go down in flames. But after that, realizing it was a blessing in disguise, because it forced us to become creative, and it forced me to learn how to do things that I likely would not have otherwise. And specifically, it forced me to learn how to talk to people, which of course, that's what we're going to spend a lot of time on tonight. But where I live in the central part of Wisconsin, any of you have ever heard that clown Bill Cook speak? He always talks about having his 5-mile circle around his Walmart in Cartersville, Georgia. And I always told him I had a 100-mile circle around my local Walmart. And that's pretty accurate. We do cover about a 200-mile radius when we're buying and selling properties locally. And I call that local. And then I've done a handful of transactions in other states as well, which is always done verbally over the phone long before I ever, jump in a car or get on an airplane to go and actually take a look at those properties. So I've just gotten really good at doing all my negotiations over the phone, almost out of necessity, because otherwise I'd be just burning fuel, driving all over the place, looking at houses that most likely wouldn't come together to contract. And so I don't see it as challenging, because for me, it's just normal. And I understand that for a lot of people that is challenging. To me, Liz, the part that I feel most people miss the boat on is they go and learn all these different strategies. They'll take a wholesaling class or a lease option class or whatever class they're going to take, and they'll get some marketing out there, and then they'll actually get some calls or some emails, and they don't know what to do then. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to talk to people. And it's, negotiations is not a sexy topic. It's not something that the gurus can go out and sell courses on very easily. And so it gets skipped by most beginners and experienced people, right? So I spent a lot of time after the crash cleaning up a mess, number one, but learning how to speak to people intentionally, right? So give you some examples. I had bank financing on a bunch of these properties. They were all upside down, had to, negotiate short sales on my own properties. and clean up this mess. And what I found back then, and anybody that's not been in real estate for, back to that point in time, there was a lot of people that were just blaming others. The mortgage companies, the appraisers, the title companies, whatever you want to blame it on, it was their fault that your deal went bad and now you're losing money. And I was going and talking with all these people and saying, I'm the responsible party. I signed on the dotted line. What do I need to do to fix this? And it was really refreshing to them. But I just noticed that as I did something different than the masses, I was treated different. That's kind of when the light bulb went on. I've never been a shy person, but I was never real social back then either. And I started, again, writing down, taking notes, actually recording my phone calls, going back and listening to my own conversations and trying to pinpoint, what did I say? What was my mannerism? What was my tone? What was I doing at the time when that conversation turned to my benefit, without being, we don't ever want to use trickery. We don't ever want to lead people down a path that's going to harm them. I know I shouldn't have to say that, but in this society, sometimes people want to manipulate and take advantage of bad situations. So I really wanted to learn how to guide people down a path to a predetermined outcome without manipulating them. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what it really came down to for me was getting my hands on anything and everything I could, books, audios. I've read and listened to a lot of the cheesy salespeople, on how to be a used car salesman type of person. And I quickly learned that was not what I wanted to do, but it was good to learn those tactics because I could actually use those to my advantage now. But the number one thing that I think people need to figure out really quickly is that you are a salesperson. If you're in real estate, doesn't matter what you're doing, buying, selling, lending, notes, whatever, you're a salesperson. And that has some negative connotations to it in most people's eyes, right? But let's kind of break down what sales is really all about. All it is leading somebody else to believe what you believe. Okay, so anybody that goes to church, your pastor, your preacher, your minister is a salesperson. They're leading you to believe in what they believe, some form, portion of the gospel or the Bible. They're really selling you on their beliefs. Okay. Your children are salespeople. If bedtime is 8:30 and they're up until 9 o'clock, who got sold? Well, you did, right? They got their way. They led you to believe that they were right, no matter how they did it. Dating, meeting your spouse, doing something like that. Essentially, you're selling yourself to that other individual that you're dating or, ultimately marrying or something like that. So if you can embrace the fact that you're a salesperson and that's not slimy and that's not creepy and it's not, the used car salesman, you have to believe in your product and be a good salesperson. And what is your product? It's you. It's what you can do to benefit and help the person on the other end of that interaction, whether it's a homeowner trying to sell you a property, whether it's somebody that, a contractor that you're getting bids from, an attorney, a banker, a lender, the list goes on and on and on. Like everything that I do is used every day of my life. And I really focus on it. I honestly, I very seldom go into any interaction that I don't already have a predetermined outcome that I want to lead that interaction to. And that comes from being very, very conscious about it. And after a while, you don't have to be conscious about it because it starts to become natural. Okay. So I'm just going to pick on people in general because it makes it more fun for me. But JR is busy right now, so I'm going to pick on him. So JR,
I'm getting called on. Hold on.
Yeah. So JR, when you go to get your haircut, okay, which love it, by the way, when you go get your haircut, how long does it take for that stylist or that barber, whatever you go to do your hair?
All the time.
I mean, how much time? 10 minutes? 20 minutes?
All of it, all that they have. They have to double book me to put it in for an extra amount of time.
A lot of product.
Like an hour? How long does it take?
An hour plus.
Okay.
Pete, I'm just joking. Pete, I'm just joking. I see a look of fear on Pete's. I do my own hair, and it probably takes him, 35 minutes.
So does that person that's cutting your hair, do they know what you do for a living by the time you leave that chair?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Yeah. Through conversation, some of it deliberate, some of it organic.
Okay. All right. Well, you were no fun. I should have picked on somebody else that was going to say no. All right, Ginger, you're up next.
What?
Ginger.
Oh, you're so funny. Okay, well, it's quite interesting because see, I actually have been very quiet, believe it or not. I talk about what I do when it's the right opportunity, but I don't like to just randomly tell everyone what I do. And I think I do that because I've had some experiences with people. And I feel like, okay, maybe they're not going to believe in what I'm doing. They might think, I have 3 heads coming from my background, because when I started real estate, I had nothing. I mean, literally, I had no money. That's what I meant. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
I had no money, right? And then I started being creative to put it all together. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to turn around and tell people close to me that know me, oh, hey, I'm doing real estate and I'm doing very well.
So what about a random stranger? What about a random stranger that you run into on the street, Ginger? Do you have a problem telling them what you do that don't know your history?
It depends on the situation. Not always. I mean, if I need their help, like, if I'm trying to find a contractor, trying to, maybe I meet someone in Home Depot and I'm going down the aisle and I see this guy, he knows like what he's doing and he's doing tiles. And hey, I need, a tile guy. Then maybe I can talk to him and ask him some questions and, tell him briefly, oh yeah, I got a rental property and can you take a look at it? Maybe. Yeah.
So a minute ago, I was talking about being a salesperson and, believing in your product, and your product is you, right? So the hesitation that I'm hearing from you tells me that you're not sold on how good you are. And that's very, very important. So I should have called on you before JR, because JR, but it's very important because until we have that confidence and we know that we're truly out there to help people, that hesitation is going to come across. And what I do over the phone, people can read that. They can absolutely hear that tone in your voice if you're not confident in what you're saying to them on how you can help them. So what I want everybody to do, and you specifically, Ginger, is just start practicing it on a day-to-day basis. Get used to telling people what you want. Okay. Here's a great example. Our lending company, we're 100% privately funded. And we run into these scenarios quite often where we're out of money, but yet we got loans we have to fund. And for the longest time, and my business partner is on this Zoom call somewhere in the screen you could verify this, but for the longest time, we were hesitant to go out and ask people to invest in our company, in our fund. And once we started realizing there's people out there that can't get the returns that we're offering and don't have the knowledge to go out and do it on their own, it got a lot easier. Going to here right now, we've got 48 participants on this call. I have no problem telling everybody on this call, I need money. I need money so I can run my business and lend money out to other house flippers, right?
I need money too, Derek. So
There
I
you go.
always need money. That's why I have a
Absolutely.
note meetup so I can get money. See, for everyone on my note meetup. No, actually,
No.
in all seriousness, I brought that up to ask you. Sometimes I think for me, because this is you kind of hit a nerve with me, right? Because sometimes I don't always like Ginger. Maybe it's a prejudiced. And that maybe is, I know I've gotten a deal from people who have nothing. So I don't know that it's not a prejudice of financial wealth. I don't know what the prejudice is, right, Ginger? So maybe it's I couldn't tell you what it is, but there is a mental thing going on. So kind of help me get past that, because I kind of understand what Ginger's saying. And I don't know if Ginger and I are different, because I'm not afraid. I don't think that they're going to make, like she said, 3 heads, like they're going to look at me funny, or maybe they're going to disrespect. You feel like there's a disrespect, or they don't take you seriously, or whatever. Maybe there's a tiny bit of that because they don't know you. But not really. Sometimes I can get too techie and give them too much information. So I don't really ever have that problem with people not taking me seriously or thinking I don't know what I know, right? Because they just ask me a few questions and they're like, okay, whatever. And so I don't really have that problem with credibility usually, because I can provide enough information, on the fly to prove credibility. But I do find that there is a prejudice, since Ginger brought that up. Thank you, Ginger, to help me get over that. I don't know what that is, where that's coming from, and who I do, because I don't tell everybody like Ginger, and I don't know why, and I need to start doing that. So will you help me, like everyone and all of us? And I'm a very experienced investor, and I don't tell everyone everywhere I go what I do. Like the hairdresser lady, yeah, because that's somebody you chat with. You chit chat. That's like what they do. Like my hairdresser knows exactly. She sent me a lead, and because that's a chit chat person. But like not every person I don't chit chat with. So help me with that.
Well, and everybody's has a different makeup, right? Like I can start a conversation with any random stranger. It doesn't bother me a bit. Other people are going to be more introverted, and I get that, and I respect that. The point I'm trying to make is you have to look internally and become confident in what you are there to offer people, right? And you can do that in a lot of different ways. I do it verbally and in public with people, but it may just be, on social media. It may be through emails or text messages, all these different things. But the point is you have to believe in the product that you're selling, and that's you. You can't help people when you get a real estate lead, we'll get into that in a second, but you can't help people if you don't believe in yourself and your abilities to actually help people. That's really the point. So the more you go out and tell the world what you do and who you are in whatever fashion you do it, the more that builds up your own confidence and your own belief in yourself. That's really what I was trying to get across. Okay.
See, I believe in me, but it's like they don't know me. And it feels like when people don't know you, and I think maybe this, it's like when you go back to when your parents tell you, but I'm like you, if you know me, right? I can talk to anyone. I can be in line. It's like trying to get me not to talk. That's the key right there, right? So I can talk to anybody, anywhere about anything, So I should be talking to them about my real estate business, but most of the time I don't.
Yeah.
I'll be talking to them about their kid or their clothes, or
I'm
not talking to them about their business.
I can talk to anyone, young or old.
Too.
I'm very I'll share with you. Not all my family knows that I'm doing real estate. Only my brothers know, but like my cousins and them and my aunts and uncles, they don't know I do real estate. One, I try to tell my cousins to, just to help her, do better with her finances and things. But then she's very negative. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to waste my time. I try to help you, but okay, I'm not even going to tell you I'm doing real estate. So I left it there. And then I don't share it with my family openly because, then you'll have, you'll have Uncle Louie and Auntie Ella. Hey, can you lend me some money?
That's it. She
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head right there. That's what.
So I tried to, I kind of, how do you say it? I just keep it reserved,
You become one of those people. That was a mindset that I thought that I had gotten over, Derek, since we're talking about this, because like in the beginning, like $10,000 was a lot of money and all this and that, but obviously this limiting mindset, it's still in there. It's like what Ginger, like I'm going to be judged because, I'm one of those people, one of those.
No. Here's another thing. I don't want.
Yes, you have money and they're going to ask you for it, or you're making too much money and you're like looking down on them. Like if you have, like my brother, I never tell him, he thinks I don't have a dime because he doesn't have one, so he's like, you don't make any money at real estate. No, I don't make any money at real estate, so as far as he knows, I never make a dime at real estate.
Let's see what Derek has as some advice for. I think he gets the gist. Let's see what he has. Maybe probing questions he can
overcoming that mindset, those limiting mindsets.
So it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I understand, I respect that if you don't want to tell your family and friends. By the same token, if you don't tell people what you do, if you don't give people, the opportunity, like how do I say this? If you don't ask the question, you don't give people the opportunity to say yes. Okay. So my business partner went for years without his family knowing that he was lending money and paying private individuals to use their money. And it got to a point where one of his family members was, visibly a little pissed off, saying, well, what do you mean I could have been making that kind of return for, those years and you never even told me about it? So you have to look at it from both sides. Now, of course, if you're getting negative feedback from your family or whatever, you don't want to dwell in the negative. You don't want to be around the negative, but there's a lot of times when you're not trying to borrow somebody's money or get their money or take their money. You're presenting them with an opportunity. And that's what I'm trying to get across. You have to shift that thought process and give them the opportunity to say yes or no. If, the majority of them don't want to acknowledge your success, or they're jealous of your success, or whatever it wants, that's fine. But for the purpose of this discussion, I just really want to kind of get that across, that you have to be confident in yourself and your abilities to help people. Beyond that, there's a lot of variables. We could go down a lot of rabbit trails, So once you have yourself and your mindset to the position of helping people, when that lead comes in, it's a lot easier and you sound confident. Like for me, I'll give you a great example. If somebody calls me and says, I'm in foreclosure, I'm losing my house, I need help. Well, I've been through it. I've personally been through it. I know all of the emotions that come with it. And I used to be ashamed of it. Now I'm not. I'm here telling 40 random strangers that most of you I don't know that I've been through it. Well, that genuineness, whether it's over the phone or face to face, they can feel that. And they know I'm not trying to take advantage of their bad situation. Okay. So you have to use in my opinion, you have to use your experiences, good and bad, and, own them and use them, right? The reason that Liz is asking me to speak here tonight isn't because I'm some super rock star. I just went through a lot of turmoil and learned from it. And now I use that turmoil and those experiences to come and hopefully keep you guys from making the same mistakes I made. That's really all it is. Okay. So when we do get into a social interaction, again, this could be over the phone, face to face, buyers, sellers, attorneys, bankers, you name it, contractors. There's always going to be somebody that controls that conversation. There's an alpha and a beta in every social interaction, whether you acknowledge it or don't acknowledge it. Somebody is going to lead that conversation. My preference is to be the alpha. And it doesn't mean you have to be arrogant about it, but you want to lead and control that conversation. The technical terminology for it is called framing and frame control. When I started practicing that and again, consciously doing things on purpose, keeping, a close eye on how people reacted to what I said. I'll give you a good example. I don't own a suit or a tie. If you ever see me in a suit and tie, it's in my coffin, and somebody should get their ass kicked because I don't want to be buried in a suit and tie. Okay. But if I'm having a social interaction with somebody that wears a suit and tie and they're trying to posture like they're, better than me, or they're trying to be the alpha, they're trying to take frame control in that scenario, I like to use humor and just be lighthearted. I try and do that all the time anyways, to show them that I'm really not impressed in their alpha stance really isn't controlling this outcome. Okay. So I'll crack a joke. It'll be something about their tie or something about their suit. Hey, I love your suit. My Armani is at the dry cleaner. I'm just wearing this flannel today. Something simple like that. Another one, you got to be a little bit confident when you do some of these, but if I've got somebody that's really trying to overtalk me, I'll deliberately say their name wrong twice. Okay. So if Adrian and I are negotiating on something and I'll just, without pausing, without stopping, I'll call him Alan. And by the second time I do that, he now is starting to internally think he's not really all that important because I can't even remember his name. And you will see, if you focus on it, you will see their demeanor change. Okay. So there's a lot of little tricks that I do like that, but just if you really want to study it, there's a couple good books out there by Orrin Claff called Pitch Anything. And he's got a more up-to-date one, which I can't remember the name of, but Orrin Claff is really the person I studied when it came to frame control. He uses some examples in the book that I'll use the same ones. If you get pulled over for speeding and officer walks up to your window, is there any circumstances or any chance you're ever going to get frame control over that interaction? Absolutely none, right? That police officer has the status, he's got the frame control, he's the alpha. No matter what, you're going to say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, take your ticket and say, have a nice day in most cases. Okay. So I just really focus on making sure that I am leading that discussion, that conversation, the direction I want it to go. Okay. Any questions on that before I go on? No. Awesome. JR, you unmuted yourself.
I love that about.
Hey, listen, I've been pulled over a fair amount of times. Okay, if I can get the guy or the gal to laugh, I might have a chance. If I can get them to laugh up front, I might have a chance.
You're not wrong, because I've gotten out of a lot of tickets over the years, but that doesn't mean you ever had control. You might have got them to.
I might not have the control of the ticket. That's absolutely right. But I might be able to soften it up a little bit. Maybe help out my situation.
Absolutely. And that is a great place. I wouldn't recommend practicing this a lot because that means you get pulled over a lot, but that is a great place. Like the last time I got pulled over, the first thing I said as the officer came to my window, I'm sorry, officer. I know that I was speeding. I know you're just doing your job, and I understand if you have to give me a ticket. That's how I said it in that tone, those exact words. Guess what he didn't do? Didn't give me a ticket. Right? Because I owned it. I was different than the other 99% of people that would have told some bullshit sob story. And I do the same thing in real estate, with my wife, with my kids, all this stuff. I mean, those of you that know my wife, I mean, I married up, first of all, so that's cool. But there's not too many things in this household that I don't get what I want at some point. You know, like everything I'm talking about tonight, it does work with your spouse too. Just don't overuse it, you know? So Adrian's laughing because he's seen my wife when she's not happy, and she knows what can happen, or he knows what can happen. But anyway, so frame control, I would definitely spend some time on that. You know, I can't do it here for the next 2 hours, but just go and read those books.
The other book is Flip the Script.
Yep, that's the newer one. Yep. So I would listen to Pitch Anything first, or read Pitch Anything first, and then go to Flip the Script, because Flip the Script will make more sense reading it second. So the other thing I really focus on, as soon as I'm in a phone call situation, especially, but face-to-face is easier, I want to try and figure out what type of person am I talking to. Okay, so you've got several different personality types. A driver is myself. I will make a decision quickly. I don't want all the details. I don't want all the, you know, the spreadsheets. Give me the short version. What's the bottom line? And I'm going to tell you yes or no. Okay. I'm going to interact with somebody else that's just like me. That's the easiest for me, because I know how I would want to be talked to. The other scenario is an analytical person. This is the exact opposite of me. So if I'm, you know, trying to negotiate with a homeowner and they're asking a lot of questions about data, right? What are the comps? How much are you going to spend on the rehab? What is it going to sell for? If they're asking a lot of analytical type questions, I believe you're going to be far more successful to go at them from a different angle in your negotiation. Okay. And we'll build on this in a little bit. The other two are very similar to each other. So one is social and the other one is social conscious. Social people really like to talk about everything other than the house, right? If we're buying their house, they are going to be telling you about their kids. You know, my son Bobby was born in this house, and now he's married to Susie, and I've got a little, you know, grandbaby named, you know, Bobby Jr. or whatever. They're just constantly talking about social things. They're very attached to the neighborhood and the block parties and all that stuff, right? And then a social conscious person is going to be very similar to that, but they're very concerned with what you're going to do with the property once you buy it. You'll kind of figure this one out quickly if they're, you know, asking you if you're going to keep it as a rental property. And this was their family home for 30 years. And now you're going to put some tenant in here, right? So trying to figure out their personality type, I will go at them from completely different angles. So if they're super analytical, as I mentioned, I'm going to give them data overload. I'm going to give them information about comps, and, you know, we will go step by step on my rehab budget over the phone. If I'm telling them I'm going to put $40,000 into your house, I'm going to work with them over the phone and come up with this rehab budget together. Okay. If I try doing that with somebody that's like me, a driver, they are going to be so bored out of their mind. And in some cases, they will flat out stop me and say, just tell me what you're willing to pay me for the house. I don't care what you're going to do with it afterwards. Okay. You guys have any questions on these? I feel like I don't want to rush through something. And quite honestly, it's harder to speak when I'm just staring at a screen and nobody else is talking back.
How about this, Derek? Do you you find there's often sometimes people that have combinations of that, right? I mean, I've definitely been at a kitchen table, not on the phone, but talking to someone who's very social and also has that social conscience thing that comes in. Or someone that just wants the facts. They just want the facts, ma'am, and that's it. But they also want to know, well, what are you going to do with this? So how do you handle that when you have a little bit of a combination?
Yeah, there certainly is combination. And, you know, the social and social conscious are very similar and could be one and the same. You're going to typically know which one is more dominant. You know, if they're more dominant towards the analytical side, but they're also asking what you're going to do with the house, that's fine. You'd want to spend more time with that type of person in answering all their questions and giving them more data than you would somebody that just wants the bottom line. Okay. So, and again, I would encourage you guys to do this on a daily basis with all of your social interactions. Like, go practice on your friends and your family, ideally with strangers, because you kind of know your friends and family mannerisms already. But if you meet somebody new tomorrow, the next day, in 2 minutes time, try and figure out what type of person they are by asking questions. Okay. And again, I did this for a long time consciously. Now it comes second nature. It's not going to happen overnight, but the more you think about it, and I would actually encourage you, if you can, even if you're face to face, if you have a voice recorder on your phone, record these interactions, go back and listen to them. If you're just on the phone in your office or at your home and you can record those calls, I did it for a long time. And it was very interesting to go back and hear not only the words that were said, but the tone and how things were said. As I mentioned, I like to use a lot of humor, but there's a time and place. If there's somebody that's just had a death in their family and you're working on helping them settle the estate, sometimes it's not really great to be cracking jokes the whole time. You have to be conscious of that. Okay. But it is not uncommon for me to propose marriage to random people that are typically 70 to 80 years old. It's not uncommon for me to ask them to, bake me cookies, or, all these things. Like it's fun. It's lighthearted. It's easy for me because I enjoy it. And I know what I, can do to help them.
So wait a minute now, Derek, are you saying that proposal you gave me yesterday isn't real? Is that what you're saying?
It's absolutely real. It's Liz, of course it's real. My wife, Tracy, already has said she'll come back to me someday if I need to go. It's fine.
Liz, you just have to sell them the right number of properties, and Tracy will understand.
Yeah,
that's kind of where that conversation was going. Now I know. Oh my gosh, I'm shocked.
Absolutely.
What about a husband and wife where there's one maybe analytical and one not?
Well,
good question.
That's a great question. I believe it was Chris. You have to address everybody and everybody's questions that's part of that decision making. And sometimes, especially dealing with estates or divorce situations, the other person may not be in the room or may not be on the phone. So how do you deal with that? Especially for me, if I'm trying to explain anything creative, I prefer to not go into it without all the decision makers in a meeting or on the phone. I've found that if I'm trying to, buy a property subject to, or get an option on a property or anything outside of the normal cash purchase, that by the time I explain it to one person and then they go re-explain it to somebody else, it goes south really fast. So, but if there's one analytical person and one driver, and you're dealing with both of them at the same time, you have to be conscious of that and address both their questions all the way through the whole interaction. But you can also use them. I don't want to say use them against each other, but you can play off of each other, right? So you might say, well, Bob and Mary, they're husband and wife. Bob's the one that just wants to get to the bottom line, and Mary's super analytical, So I'll call them out on it and say, well, listen, Mary, I understand you have a lot of questions. It sounds like Bob just wants the bottom line. I'm more than happy to get you the data you want, but I want to make sure that, Bob's comfortable and you're comfortable. So you tell me what I can do to make that happen. Just acknowledge it. I'll also use things like if I've got somebody that thinks we're just scammers or we're trying to take advantage of a bad situation, I will throw my business partner under the bus every day, all day, because he's not in that social interaction. And so to me, using that person that's not there as kind of a pivot point is really beneficial, right? If I'm going to do a deal and I know it's a deal, but they're hesitant, I'll start backing off. Now, this changes depending on your market and how hot your market is. If there's a lot of competition, you may not be able to take the time, but I will back out of an interaction with somebody and say, you know what, I really would love to make you this offer today. And, you know, it's approximately $100,000, but my business partner, you know, he's really anal about the numbers, and I really have to go and talk to him about this. So how about I give you a call back in a few days? Okay. By doing that, I've kind of dangled my offer, and then I retracted it. And in their mind, they've already got the property sold, and now I'm backing off. Again, I do a lot of stuff with off-market deals where nobody else knows these properties are for sale. So if I feel like that's the case, and I know they're hesitating, I mean, if they're ready to sign a dotted line, I'm getting to their house and signing a contract. But if I feel hesitation in their voice, I retract. I pull back a little bit. Okay. Chris, did I answer your question fully or not?
Yes. My one quick follow-up is, who do you find makes the decisions, just generally without being prejudiced, whatever if it's a man or a woman?
Why are you trying to get me lynched? Why would you ask
yes,
that
exactly.
I mean,
I think that's a cultural question too, though. I watch 4 different cultures, and like I'm working with the Seminole Indian tribe, and it's a matriarchal system. A lot of Hispanics are matriarchal. So depending on what culture you're talking to, it could be patriarchal or matriarchal. So that makes a difference as well. And when you're talking, Derek, about analytical, I call it the green personality. I do yellow, red, green, and blue. And green, to me, I'm a green yellow, which is a Mother Teresa and researcher, right? And that's most nurses and stuff. But the cool thing about analytical is once you do answer all their questions, they're sold on you, and they'll never leave you in a sale. So if it's a long-term thing, or if it's repeat business, those green, or what you're calling analyticals, will stay with you forever. Because once they buy in and they accept that you're not a scammer, they'll bring people to you for the rest of your life.
I would agree with that,
I just know
Becky.
from buying houses or selling houses that generally the decision maker is the woman. And I didn't know on buying them what you found, who's the decision maker.
I'm going to play politically correct here and say it's 50-50, only because there are so many different scenarios. I would agree with you when you are selling. Like if I'm selling a property and my buyers are coming through, it's usually a woman that's deciding. But, you know, we're in some really weird situations. They're usually financial distress or, you know, physical distress in the properties. So I don't think it's comparing apples to apples, Chris. But certainly on the selling side, retail selling, yeah, I believe in general that the women make the final decisions or the final push. I interact with both, and I would say it's 50-50. I don't really think I have an opinion different on that part of it.
Part of that may be because not only do we have the 4 types, and everybody is some basic blend of the 4, with one of them being predominant, but also it depends on the circumstances. For example, a dominant type may be evident on Derek as he does his job, but another type may be dominant with Derek as he works with his family, social. It depends. We used when I was doing this years ago, we taught a course to business leaders on team building, and we would set them down with their teams and have them go through a profiling instrument and determine which of the 4 types each individual of that team tended to display, and then put together a working team. Ideally, a 4-person team, for example, would be one of each of the 4 types, so that everybody has all of their personality needs expressed and covered and met. It depends, in my view, it depends on the circumstance. No one is the same type in every situation.
And that's really the key, Walter, is to read that as fast as you can, right?
Right.
So what I do is not magic. It's just really paying close attention to everything that is said and done. In person, obviously you can see and hear their facial expressions and their body language. Over the phone, it's really just listening and hearing their tone, more so even than the words they're saying. So if you can hear them sniffle, or they're crying a little bit, or all these different things, you got to pick up on that and then adapt. Specifically when I do get somebody on the phone, because I know a lot of people want to know, how do I get people to talk about seller financing? Okay. Within the first couple minutes, I have 2 goals. First one is to figure out what personality type I'm dealing with. Second one is I want them to know a little bit about me so that they feel the rest of my questions are not intrusive. Okay. So I will have my elevator pitch, and it'll essentially be, Walter, we buy houses several different ways. All cash is typically going to be our lowest offer. If that doesn't work for you, we can take over your loan payments if you have debt, or if you don't have debt, we can make payments over time. In some cases, we lease the property from you and buy it at a future date. That usually comes into play if you're trying to offset some capital gains taxes or something like that. I just say all of this so you understand that we've got multiple ways to help you today. The end. Okay. So that little elevator pitch that you can probably tell I say a lot, as I now start asking them questions about, do they have debt? Well, they know why I'm asking, because I've already told them that it's one of our scenarios or one of our strategies to help them. If I start asking them any other personal questions, the times that I get negative, pushback is really, really minimal. Okay. If I make a cash offer and it's offensive to them, well, I already told them our cash offer is typically going to be our lowest offer. If that doesn't work for you, here's another strategy, right? So it softens it significantly, and I can get them usually within 15 to 20 minutes is my average time on the phone with somebody on a property that I want. I can usually have them to a preliminary yes to my offer within that time frame, long before I ever go and schedule a time to see the property. Okay. Now, a lot of people just say, ask questions. It's all about asking questions. And that's not wrong. That is 100% correct. But I just feel like how you ask those questions and how you pre-frame it is way more important than most people want to admit. Okay. Any questions on that?
I just had one question. So really, like, I mean, you sound really comfortable on the phone, and I've just been cold calling, been doing a lot of it, and sometimes these people are really angry. Like, how do you stay in control of a conversation like that when it seems like the other person is kind of antagonizing you, even if you know that you might have a potential deal on your hands?
I had a hard time hearing you, Marcus. I think what you were asking was how do I?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep. Go ahead, Marcus.
All right. So clearly, it sounds like you're really comfortable on the phone, and I was just wondering, like, in a lot of these situations, like, I've been cold calling a lot recently, and sometimes the sellers can be really angry. So how do you maintain, like, I guess, like, your alpha position, or just like maintaining the flow of conversation with those sellers? Like, sometimes you might have a deal on your hands, but the people can be really angry sometimes.
Well, so cold calling is obviously more challenging than if they're reaching out to you. Marcus, tell me what you say when you call them. What's the first thing you say when they pick up the phone?
Well, I just ask their name. So I'd be like, hey, is this, like, I'll just say my name. Hi, is this Mark? And then, like, they'll either respond or they don't respond. And then I'm just like, hi, I know this call is out of the blue, but I was calling about a property I believe you own on, like, just a random address, like 680 Arbor Glen Circle. And then I just was wondering if you would consider an offer on your property there. And then a lot of people will come at me and they'll be like, what's your number? What's your number? What do you have? And then, you know, like, I haven't even, a lot of times it's just like a big list. So, like, I haven't even, like, ran, like, any, like, comps for their property. So I'll just have to come up with a number on the spot, off the top of my head. And a lot of times, like, since it's a cash offer, the offer is, like, usually, like, a really big low ball. And, like, I've had times where, like, they'll just get offended and just, like, hang up, you know?
Okay. So I would handle that a little different in a couple of parts of it. So when you first get on the phone and they answer, I would always ask them, is this a good time for us to talk about your, you know, you can say, I'm calling about your property at 123 Main Street.
Right.
Is this a good time? Do you have a few minutes? And again, I'll go back to what most people don't do. It's being respectful, right? Because if they're in the middle of supper, or they've got their kids at the doctor, or 1,000 other things that are going on, you don't want to talk to them at that time anyways, because they are not going to be focused on your conversation. So if they come back and say, no, this is a bad time, ask their permission to follow up. Would it be okay if I call you back tomorrow? Or would it be okay if I call you back? When is a good time for you? Again, most cold callers are not doing this. So they're just going through and speed dialing and trying to find the low-hanging fruit. You set yourself apart from everybody else when you are respectful and ask these questions. Would you agree?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Derek.
Okay. In regards to the property itself, I would also, if they're not interested, I would also be asking them, do you know anybody in that area? Because I really like that neighborhood. Do you know anyone else that might be selling? And see if you can get a referral out of it. If they are getting really short with you and really blunt with you and saying, well, just give me a number. What's your offer? What's your offer? You be respectful and say, sir, ma'am, you know, I don't have an exact dollar amount for you because I don't know the condition of your house. I don't know the condition of your property. I'd love to come and meet with you and sit down with you if you're willing. I've bought properties in your neighborhood that were approximately, right? So I wouldn't use the word approximately, but you could say, like, Marcus, what's the dollar amounts of houses that you're looking at or selling?
It's not really a particular dollar amount for the amount of houses I'm selling. I'm just trying to get my first wholesale deal right now. So
okay,
just really anything.
Cool. Okay, so you could say, you know, I bought a property in your neighborhood that needed, you know, a light cosmetic rehab, and it was right around $100,000. By keeping it very general and vague, you're not being offensive to them. You're not saying their house is worth $100,000. You're saying, I bought a property down the street for $100,000. Okay. if you've never bought a house down the street, don't lie to them. Say, I've got a colleague of mine, I have a friend of mine, I have a partner of mine that bought a house down the street for $100,000, right? Again, I'm not saying your house is worth $100,000. That's just the experience that I've had or my colleague has had. Okay. So don't make up a number just to give them a number, or flat out ask them, what would you like to get for your house? If you could get what you wanted, what would that number be? And start the conversation there. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And I might add to it, if for any reason you don't have a friend that bought a house down the street, you can always make it even more vague by saying something like, I think Derek, like saying, I know someone who's bought a house in a neighborhood similar to this in this price range, blah, 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 blah. So then you're not, focused on that street. You don't have to, but you don't want to lie to them. Yeah.
Right. And, I think there's some information out there. A lot of people tell you, well, you got to be, just stiff in a negotiation, and somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. So the other misnomer is, if you give the first number, you lose. I don't believe that. But I give the first number. If they refuse to tell me what they'd want for the property, okay, I'm going to give them a range. I'm going to soften the blow and tell them, we've bought houses between 100 and 150,000 or 100 and 110,000. Do you think it's worth our time to get together and look at yours? If they wanted 200,000 for their property, I'm not driving to their property if we can't come to, terms over the phone, like I said before. So if I give somebody a range, it's probably between 100 and 110,000. Do you think it's worth our time to get together? And that's exactly how I would phrase it. If they say no, great. Can I follow up with you in 30 or 60 days? Always ask for permission to follow up with them too, because it's much, much easier that way. But you're not offending them. You're just telling them what you have spent or what you would spend in that neighborhood. Okay.
All right. Thanks for the input.
Absolutely. Anybody else got a question?
Hey, Derek, can I hear your elevator pitch again?
Yeah, for sure. I got to get in character again, Ashley. Here we go. Okay. So Ashley, we buy houses in several different ways. Our cash offers are typically our lowest offer. If that doesn't work for you, we've bought properties where we've taken over your debt payments, or if you don't have debt, we've made payments over time. In some cases, we even lease property if you don't want to sell it right away, and we buy it at a future date. This is usually done to offset capital gains taxes or other inheritance taxes, things like that. The end. Now, I do mix it up a little bit depending on what the first couple minutes looked like in that conversation, but that's the general gist of it. Okay. Feel free to copyright that, Ashley, but I'm still going to use it. Where else were we going with this? I got kind of off. I don't have an agenda, but I was kind of following a timeline or an outline here. Everybody's good with that?
Yeah.
So who on this call, because I want a little feedback, who on this call feels really comfortable with how they negotiate? Well, Pete, you don't, good God, sir, you don't count. You taught me 99% of what I do, so that's not fair. Susan, you like how you negotiate?
Mostly, not always. Sometimes I leave too much money on the table.
Okay. So tell me how your interactions usually go. Are you doing things in person? Are you doing things on the phone?
I'm better in person. Yeah.
Okay.
I like buying things from wholesalers though, because I don't like going through a lot of sellers or taking a lot of phone calls. But I'm a better an institutional negotiator. That's my jam right there, cutting through red tape. I used to do that for and taxes and things like that, I'm your government negotiator, because there's no feelings involved. When there's people there and they're in foreclosure, it's very difficult for me to separate, you know, their situation from the deal.
Why do you think? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is, Susan? Do you think that's because you're going to take advantage of their situation somehow?
Well, well, the truth is because I was a single mom for a long time, and I was really, I wouldn't call it poor, but I mean, I paid my bills, and I guess that's what it is I feel like I lived in that world a lot longer than I've been on this side of the fence. And that's what it is. It's a mindset problem that I know that I'm working on getting over.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm working on it very diligently. I really am. So I really have to, before I actually go, so I don't work on a lot of foreclosures, but I'm much better at it these days. I don't struggle with it as much. And if I do, then I have reinforcements like other investors, like Liz or Chris or, you know, Becky or other people, you know, because I know where my weaknesses are.
So if you had somebody that approached you that wasn't a wholesaler, that wanted to sell you a property, what would you typically, how do you lead into a seller financing transaction?
Well, that's where the numbers, I might actually give them a little bit more money if they were like a family and they were in trouble than I would if they weren't. You know, okay. I would talk to them. I have to look at the comps. You know, how much money did they need to move? I mean, the numbers are the numbers. I mean, they're in black and white. You know what I mean? But if there's any way that oftentimes, because I'm very creative, there might be ways to make more money down the road or something like that. Oftentimes I struggle if I make too much money on it in the end. But just because I have more skills that they don't have.
Okay. So I guess let me rephrase the question. If you're talking to a homeowner and you want to be able to either buy that property on terms or take it subject to or lease option it, how do you bring up that conversation?
Well, actually, that would be easy. I would just ask them, you know, what are their plans, you know, with their property? Are they, you know, their situation is, do they have someone who can help them? You know, do they have family members who can help them bring it current? Do they have any retirement? Can they get a loan? Can they refinance? What can I help you? Have a mortgage broker that I could send you to? What can I do to help? You know, I would try everything I could for them to save it themselves if they could. Could you sell it? You know, what are the things you could do? Could I buy it from you? You know, what are the things? And then we'd have to put it on paper. This is what it would cost you for a realtor. This is what it would cost you for that. This is what it would cost you to bring it, you know, and then this is what I could pay, you know, the yellow pad, you know, this is what you could net.
Let me help you, Susan. Susan, are you selling to their personality? Or are you selling and negotiating to your personality?
It really just depends on their situation, what they need to get out.
But, you know, like he's saying, there's different personalities. Like I call them red, green, whatever. There's analytical. If the person's analytical and you're talking dollars, the analytical cares about research, not about dollars. So do you spend time talking about the research or the analyzing with the analytical person? Like those personalities on the other side of the table is really who you're negotiating with to their personality. Do you know what I'm saying?
So, I'm actually showing them how I came up with the number, but you're saying that's not necessarily what they need to see.
I'm saying you might lose what I call a red personality, someone that's all about the dollars because you're too much in the details and they don't care. They want, baby needs a new pair of shoes. What's the bottom dollar? Okay. And so you're spending all this energy and helping them understand, and they don't want to understand. They just want the bottom dollar. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I usually ask them, what can I do to help? Is what I usually start out the conversation.
What's interesting is I like hearing how Becky, portrayed that, because until we know ourselves very, very, very well, like we all know ourselves, but Susan in that interaction was going at it the way she would want it to go to her, versus what Becky's pointing out. Those people might not care about the yellow pad and the bottom line, and this is how much this costs.
That's why I'm offering what I'm offering.
Right. So,
justifying the low.
And the next person very much might, like Pete using a T-bar, it works wonders for 99% of people. But then there's also that 1% of people who are just like, give me the bottom line. I don't care about the, this is now, that's later. Just what is the bottom line? And you have to be able to adapt how you're presenting it to people, and it will increase your conversion. Pete, go ahead.
Derek, I don't think it's not about the bottom line for most people. When I hear somebody say, baby needs a new pair of shoes, I say, if I bring you those shoes, will you give me that house?
Right.
Because that's what, no one wants the money. There's not one blessed soul who's going to take the money. It's like taking a big chunk of ice and sitting in their living room and letting it melt away. They need another house, they need a medical, but there's something. And it's in determining what it is and lessening the pain for people that you're successful with this. It doesn't matter what personalities they have. Now the personalities they may be quicker to anger, but you have to hear them. And I mean, you guys heard me talk about it so often because it's really about solving problems for people and making them happier. I look at all the different benefits and I take whichever ones they need the least for myself. I bought a house down here on the water that the lady lived in since 1953. She had a cash offer from a builder of $350, and she accepted $261 with terms for me. The reason was because the builder was going to tear down her home and build a new house. I was going to fix up her house and rent it. Well, until you hear those kinds of stories and find out what's going on, it's very hard to do business, I find, with people.
Yeah, so I'll tell you guys about a lead that came in 2 days ago. And I was supposed to meet with this woman today, but her mother is 89 years old. She's 60 years old. They live in a single-story ranch house, 2-car garage, beautiful neighborhood, and she wants $155,000 for the house. Now, this is the upper Midwest, so our price points are a little lower than yours. So that house is worth about $175 to $180 after it's updated, because it's definitely needs some updating. And so doing everything I told you guys I do, getting through my first half or my first pitch, my first 3 or 4 minutes, I asked her a lot of questions, and she said, well, we have a condo that we're going to move into, but it's not going to be ready for 3 to 4 months. Okay. So what's the first thing that clued me in on this could be a scenario where they might be willing to hold paper. She told me there was zero debt and that they didn't know exactly when they could sell the property because they can't move into the condo right now, right? If she put that house on the market with a realtor, it's gone in a matter of days, okay? But that doesn't solve her problem. And she's, again, within 2 minutes, she's a very social person, social conscious. She doesn't care about analytics. She doesn't really want to make a snap decision. It was really important to her that they had somewhere to go or somewhere to live during this period of time. She cannot keep up with the maintenance on the property herself. Her 89-year-old mother is got dementia. Like, everything was about her mom and getting to their next roof over their head. So when I asked the question if she would take payments over time, which, by the way, I never use the term seller finance. I feel like it just scares civilians to death. So I just asked if they'll take payments over time. And she said, well, honestly, I don't really want to get the payments. We just need about $5,000 of move out money. And you can pay me in the future whenever you sell the house. Okay. Now, I don't want that. And when we meet in person, we're going to work that out because I actually want to make payments over time. But the structure isn't as important as the conversation. The conversation was really, I can close on this property whenever you want, as long as we put it under contract ahead of time. You know, I do want a contract now, but if it's 5 months from now or 12 months from now, I don't care. So that is what's solving their biggest problem. They want that peace of mind, knowing the day they want to move out, the property is sold, they've got their move out money, and they can go to their condo. Okay. So to me, I think that what I really am good at is listening more than asking questions. Now, if you ask my wife, she's going to disagree with that, but that doesn't matter. You know, she's my wife. I'm not supposed to listen to everything she says. So, Susan, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because
I think too, when you're asking me that, it's intuitively when you're listening to, when you're on the conversation, you're kind of feeling the person out. You're like, what do they need? You're asking, you're inquiring, you know what their situation is. They're telling you. I'd almost have to, like you said, tape it because you're in the thralls of it all. You know what I mean? Inquiring about the property and their situation. So I'm going to have to tape myself because when you ask me, I'm
absolutely.
like,
And that's why I suggested that earlier. I think you should record yourself and go back and study these. I did it for a long time. Mm-hmm. I mean, even to this day, all of our calls that are made through our office phone system are all recorded calls. So if we ever want to go back and listen to them, and I think it's not so much the words they use as the tone a lot of times. You know, as this woman, Christine is her name, as Christine was talking to me, it wasn't the words she was saying, it was the concern about her 89-year-old mother who's got dementia. And all of these different tones is what told me I can solve their problem. The concern in her voice about not having or having to wait 3, 4, 5 months before they can move into this condo, knowing that they could list their property tomorrow and sell it, but that doesn't solve her problem, right? That was all in her tone. It wasn't in her words.
Yes.
And I really try and key in on that over the phone. And if it's in person, you're seeing the facial expressions or the body language too, right?
Oh, well, Jimmy's been with me when we've negotiated something. I don't know Jimmy, how do I approach it? Jimmy Green and I, we were doing a deal and I was talking to a seller about seller financing. Yeah. I don't know, because I'm just doing it. It's like a flow, you know?
No, it's really natural for you. I mean, like you mentioned before, you have so many skills, and
it's just a flow.
It flows really good from you, and your credentials it flows for you, really nice.
I don't think about it. It just flows, right. It's just like, they say something, I say, like they tell me, but I like it in person because I watch their body language and I'm watching their micro expressions too. Like, yeah. So when I say not so much what they say, but how they say it, and then their facial expressions when they say what they say. So it's all like a whole thing that I'm watching as they're saying what they're saying. So I like the in-person. Yeah. And then
so how does Jimmy do it?
He sits back and watches me, but we were really good. We play off of each other.
Susan,
we did good.
Susan.
Uh-huh.
Do you talk over Jimmy when he's trying to negotiate, or do you? And I'm not trying to be an asshole here. I'm really trying to make an observation, because when I asked Jimmy a question and you talked over him immediately, if you do that to sellers, you're killing yourself. And I'm not trying to be really,
that's a good point.
But it was like, as soon as I asked Jimmy a question, you were right there. If you're doing that to sellers or buyers or anybody, you're hurting yourself, you know?
Agreed.
So Jimmy, what are your interactions like? You've obviously been with Susan on some negotiations. What are yours?
You know, I don't have the experience, obviously, that Susan does, but, you know, I do have some creative knowledge, I guess. And so, you know, I try to do what I can over the phone, but I try to get in person as much as possible. It's difficult for me on phone. I do pretty good when I can get to their house. That doing that conversion to get from the phone to the house is difficult for me.
So you said something just now, Jimmy, that I found really interesting. It's you don't have a lot of the creative experience. So how would you handle that if you were, because I have people that come to me, you know, just through our REIAs and stuff that said, I've got you know, a subject to deal, or I've got an option deal or something. They don't know how to structure it and they don't want to say the wrong thing. So if you're interacting with somebody and you don't know the answers, how do you still portray yourself as the expert and not lose that lead?
That's a good question. I guess I've got modest creative, you know, I've done a sub-2 deal or two, and I'm dealing with that issue right now. And, you know, I usually just, you know, let me reach out to my business partner, let me run it by him to see if everything, you know, this situation that Susan mentioned, it was exactly that. You know, it's a mobile home park and some other stuff. And, you know, so I reached out to her, you know, for help on that one, because that's, you know, that's above my pay grade, to be honest with you. Yeah. So, and then, so with Susan, you know, she's just so skilled and knowledgeable. It flowed naturally. And so I guess in that scenario, you know, I reached out for, you know, for help on that.
Okay. So what you just said to me, I really loved, and I'll tell you why. If I was the seller and you use the words, "It's above my pay grade," with the right tone, I would laugh and I would respect it all at the same time. Where I think people screw up is they try and fake it till they make it, and they get caught in a lie, right? So if we were on an interaction and I'm the homeowner and I'm selling to you and I'm in default, I'm 6 months behind on my mortgage, and you're like, "Derek, I honestly know that I can help you, but this scenario is above my pay grade. My colleague or my partner or my friend Susan, she handles all these things. She's a rock star. Can I set up a conference call between the three of us?" You, by doing it that way, you saved yourself. I mean, you didn't try and lead them down a path that you couldn't answer, number one, but they still look at you as the helper. They look at you as the expert that was humble enough to say, "I don't know the answers, but I know the person that knows the answers." And that's perfect. Like, to me, I love being self-deprecating to a certain degree, right? Like picking on myself. I will say to people, Jimmy, I really hope you don't, you know, lump me in with all those low baller flippers, because those guys they're vultures, but that's not what we do. You know, especially if you know that's an objection already, bring it up first, right? Or bring it up that say, "Listen, I everything you've told me, I understand. I don't know exactly how to structure this, but my partner Susan is a rock star at this. Can I set up a call?" So that's great. That's what you should do. But I would use that line. I would use that "it's above my pay grade" line if you use it right.
Right, with the right tone.
A little bit of humor and right tone, it goes a long way. Being humble goes a long way. Letting people know that you're just like them goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's worked for me a little bit to, you know, because I try to be humble with everybody and understanding, and so that's kind of worked with my, I guess, my accent and my, you know, my personality. So
you have an accent?
Just a little bit, you know.
Almost everybody on this call has an accent. in my opinion. But you're all Southerners, so awesome.
Mine's a little thicker than everybody else's.
Anybody else that's got a different way that they handle leads or handle?
Hey, how you doing? It's Rosemary.
Hey, Rosemary.
I just want to apologize. I started late, but I was busy closing a loan. I'm a signing agent, so I just finished that. But I'm glad what Jimmy had to say, because I'm really novice to all this, and I haven't started any deals. I'm actually just starting and asking people for their information when I see some properties that are people want to sell or look like they might be interested in selling. So I'm still learning to get the right verbiage down. But I kind of what I do, I guess, is kind of a little bit like what Jimmy does. I'll ask him questions like if I was just a typical home buyer, and that's kind of the way I'm approaching it with what other people have told me to start that way. And then when they started asking me questions like, well, first of all, I'm trying to gather some information, see what is it that you need. And then I have some partners that I work with because they're a little bit more versed in certain things than I am, and just kind of talk with them and see what we could offer you to help you in your situation. That's kind of the way I approach it right now. I don't know if it's the right way to do it, but it's what I feel safe in, trying to be honest at the same time without making myself sound stupid, if that makes any sense.
It does, Rosemary. What time did you jump on? How long ago did you jump on?
About 10-15 minutes ago.
Okay. So early on, Liz, do these things get recorded? Do the members get the recordings?
Yes, I'll be sending it out in the next day or two as soon as I get it from Zoom. Thank you.
Okay. So Rosemary, go to the first 20 minutes or so of tonight's meeting. And because the short version is, even as you were explaining that to me, there's a lot of hesitation in your voice, which just means you're not 100% sold on your own abilities and your own skills. And that hesitation is coming across to the seller or the person you're interacting with. So if you go back and listen to some of the stuff we talked about earlier, I think that'll help you a lot. Ultimately, as I told Jimmy, you don't want to ever lie to anybody or misrepresent yourself, but you still have to sound confident that you can help them, right? Like, you know, people that can help them, but sound confident when you do that, because otherwise, as you were just saying that to me, I mean, I'm just going to be blunt with you. I didn't believe you. I didn't believe that you had the skills and the knowledge to help me, even though you very likely do. But the tone in your voice didn't give me that confidence that you did.
Well, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to the buyer.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not trying to pick on.
No. And I get that. Like right now, I'm actually at I usually a little more perkier, but I'm dog tired right now.
Me too.
And I'm like, I've been on the go like all week, and today I'm stick a fork in me. I'm done. So.
No, I understand. And what we were talking about earlier was everything has to be intentional. So if you are talking to a seller, you intentionally have to be confident and perky and all those types of things. So,
right. I agree.
But that will help you for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Appreciate that.
Hey, Derek, could I add just a small thing to that, if you don't mind?
Yep.
Okay. One thing, and when I first started, I was very nervous about talking to anybody. I know that it's hard for everyone on here to believe, but it is true. And so, and I still get nervous. Even today, I get a little, any day I get nervous because it's so important to me to get it right, or to try to hopefully get the deal, help the people, etc. One thing that really helped me, because I found that it was hard for me to not to be strong or confident about it, if while I was talking to them, I'm also thinking ahead of what to say, thinking ahead of what to respond, and then I wasn't truly listening to them. And when I went to Pete's class and other people's class, I know I'm supposed to listen first, right? And so I practice that. But even then, I want to know what am I going to say, because I would be nervous about it. So I started creating my own little scripts, if you will. It wasn't something I had to do by rote, but a script gave me sort of an outline of what I thought I could ask or talk about, the questions I wanted to ask. I mean, all those things. I put it down on paper so that when I was talking to them, and I would think over the phone it'd be even easier because they can't see I have the piece of paper. I used to just take the pieces of paper with me, and people overlooked it. They were fine with it, but over the phone, they can't even see I have the paper. And I can look at those questions, or it gives me a guide. It makes me more confident because I've already kind of set up some things that I'm going to say or the way I'm going to say it. And then I felt I could be relaxed and really listen to what they're saying and go from there. Have you found that to be helpful for anybody or anything like that?
I mean, yes and no. I would say a script for some people, again, depending on your personality, a script for me would absolutely drive me crazy, because I really enjoy the bantering and the off the cuff, I guess thinking quickly and answering quickly. But if you are that personality that really likes to check the box and say, okay, what's their mortgage? And you don't necessarily ask it that way, but you check that box and you go down a script. You have to do whatever is right for you and whatever makes it the most comfortable for you.
I didn't use the scripts forever, by the way. I only used them in the beginning to sort of as a guide to make sure I covered or did the things I want, my intentions were. And then now, of course, it's all natural and I don't have to use that. So
I would agree with that.
I'm just saying it was just a little something so that I could relax a little bit into it, I guess.
Absolutely. And I agree with that 100%, Liz. In the beginning, did I have a lead sheet that has certain questions on it? Yeah, absolutely. But what I didn't want to do was sound like a robot asking questions. What is your mortgage payment? How much are your taxes? Like that, that's what, to me, scripts can sometimes set you up for failure.
I see.
But if you're using it as an outline, I love that idea. I love that idea.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. When I say the word script, that's really what I mean too. So thank you for saying that, because I don't want anyone to think that I go in there with a rote thing necessarily. I'm just using it as a rough outline so that I can relax into the rest of the conversation and listen. And it was just a great way for me to do that until I learned all. Then it becomes, like Susan said, a rote thing. Then you just do it naturally. But yeah, my nervousness is what made me create that, to cover my butt and make sure I got across what I wanted to.
Well, what I found, the little trick that I tell my other students and stuff over the years that I've taught, is those people typically, especially if they're calling you, they typically have picked up that phone and put that phone down probably a dozen times, building up the courage to call you because they're so nervous. And if you kind of flip the script a little bit and think about it in that regard, like, that you're there to help them, and they had to build up the courage to call you. I think it takes a little pressure off. At least it does for me, because I know I'm there to help them. So as long as I'm not trying to take advantage of their bad situation and I'm being ethical and moral at all times, it's almost a disservice if I don't call them or talk to them, right? So you got to kind of flip it around. Pete, you had something you wanted to add?
Well, several of the people early on were saying just what you were just talking about, and that they were unsure. And a place to start is with people you've already helped. People said, I didn't want my family to know. I don't want to bring it up in public. But you've had people with whom you've had success in your life. You've rented a house to somebody. You've rented an apartment from somebody. You borrowed money and paid it back. You've lent people money. You bought a house. You sold a house. All of those people are happy they knew you because they got the loan, they got the apartment, they got the rent. And those are the people to start with. Start talking about what you're doing now and what you're looking for, and ask what you can do for them. But that's a very comfortable place to start with people who really admire you because you have helped them with something already.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And I think a lot of us don't put enough emphasis in our own skills, or not emphasis, but I had this for a long time. I'm from the upper Midwest, the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. It's 6 degrees outside right now, right? Like, why would 42 people want to sit on a Zoom call and listen to me for 2 hours? We all have that self-doubt. And it's almost like a cancer, because that's what's going to prevent us from calling that homeowner or calling that attorney or whoever it is, asking for money, right? We always have that self-doubt. And the reality is it's silly. It really is. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Hour before this call, I'm like, well, Pete's going to be on the call. You know, I'm one of Pete's biggest fans. I've learned so much from him over the years. I respect him like no other. And I'm like, okay, Pete's going to be on the call. I better not say anything stupid, because I'm going to, you know, I won't hear about it from Pete. But, you know, God forbid Bill Cook was on this call. That'd be a shit show. But, you know, we all have that self-doubt. And you have to conquer that somehow, right? At the end of the day, we're all human. And again, I go back to, if I humble myself and I acknowledge that I'm no different than anybody else on this call or anybody I interact with on a day-to-day basis, we're all equals. Some of us are better at other skills, right? But we're all equals. And it makes it so much easier. I don't remember who it was earlier in the call, but you didn't want to tell your family about what you are doing. Well,
Ginger.
I have found that if you're going to prejudge everybody in every scenario, you can talk yourself out of just about anything. Mm-hmm. You know, like me prejudging Pete listening to me for 2 hours. I could have let it bother me enough to where I screwed up tonight. And no, Pete, I'm just using you as a great example. I know you would never. Anyways,
Pete would never. Other people,
he wouldn't.
Bill,
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't go through my head. And that's the point, is we all have trash in our heads. Mm-hmm. And it's just that, it's trash. We got to get rid of that trash.
Yes.
You know, Ginger prejudging what her aunt and uncle might say, maybe she's right. Maybe they would say those things. But prejudging it, you're just setting yourself up with trash in your head. You know, that's the biggest thing that takes a lot of time and a lot of mental energy to try and get over that. Like, you know, Adrian and I are good friends, and Adrian spends a lot of time on self-reflection and things like that to try and help with that head trash. I don't do nearly as much, self-reflecting as Adrian does, but I drink more than Adrian does. So it kind of does the same thing, you know. See, now he's laughing.
That's great.
So the point is, we just got to get out of our own ways. Honestly, that's what 99% of what I do is. I learned how to talk to people, and I do it intentionally. And some days it's still awkward, but you got to get out of your own way so that you can help people, right?
I don't know if this helps. Sometimes when I have a situation like that, I try not to think of me as me. I know it sounds weird, but I think kind of like an actress, and kind of separate myself, my professional self from my personal self. And when I do that, I tend to do way better, and I sound way more confident than when I do it as my normal me, if that makes any sense.
Well, I got to tell you, Rosemary, that comment you just made now sounded way more confident than what you said earlier.
Well, because I was also at Walmart and I wouldn't want other people to listen to my conversation. I'm not gonna lie.
No, but as somebody that studies, you know, tones and how people interact, I gotta tell you, like I believed everything you just said way more just because your tone was different. It was more upbeat. And that's honestly, that's all I do is I really focus on how people are coming across and what they're saying and how they're saying it. It's not magic. It's just being intentional while paying attention to everything.
Agreed.
Right?
I agree wholeheartedly.
So
and I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
And for what Liz said, I'm kind of piggyback off of her. I tend to, especially since I'm being so self-conscious of being new, and sometimes that hurts me, sometimes it doesn't. But I do use a kind of like a checklist, so I could write down the things that I want to know about the property, but still try to have a conversation. But that way I could go back and talk to somebody like Liz or Susan or the other, what I call real estate gurus, has been in the business longer than I have. So I could bounce off ideas and, okay, what did I miss? Did I do this right? And get their feedback. So I utilize the checklist so I could know what to answer when I get back with them, to let them know, okay, this is what I found out. This is what's going on. This is kind of the situation that they have going. What I do now, and then I get back to the person with what I've got. And if I needed any more information, okay, you know, I spoke to my partners and we had some questions, or they had some questions about X, Y, and Z, whatever was it that they told me to go back and ask.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Let me ask, I need a volunteer, somebody that's done, I don't know, 3 to 6 deals. All right, DC.
Hi, I'll play your game. I also had a comment and a question.
Well, you go first.
Well, my comment on scripts, when people call me and they're on a script and they're like, tell me your social security number and your firstborn, I get ticked off. I say, will you stop reading the script and just answer my question? So for those of you who are thinking about scripts, that's just a comment from my end. My question was, I do okay face-to-face with people, but on the phone, I'm missing all the nonverbal cues. And I often go wrong because I can't see the expression on their face, or when they're mad or sad or whatever it is. And I was wondering how you compensate for that on the phone.
Well, I mean, can you hear the tone in their voice? Do you pick up on that?
Usually it's like silence. I don't know. Okay, what is that?
Okay, so silence is one of the ninja, you know, secrets to negotiating. Who breaks the silence first usually doesn't do real well, right? So is the silence?
So Pete says.
Yeah. Well, is the silence coming because you asked them a question and they're not answering it? Or give me some ideas of where the silence is coming from.
I don't know. It's where I'm missing. Maybe it's you know, being too analytical and they are looking for something else. Coming at it with, you know, we'll honor your family by, you know, naming it after them and, you know, doing a great renovation and make it care less. I don't really know where it is. I don't do well on the phone.
So what's your personality? Are you analytical, or what are you like? You're super analytical. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you called me and you were analytical, I would probably be really short with you and go silent as well, because I would be bored because I'm not analytical. So if you're conscious about it now and you know that you're analytical and you're talking to somebody that's analytical, great. It's going to be such an easy conversation. But if you're filling me full of facts and I just want, give me the bottom dollar, give me the bottom line, you have to adjust. You have to recognize it and adjust. And it's going to be hard. I will say probably the biggest challenge is if you're super analytical, dealing with somebody like me, because I just give me the facts quickly. I want to make a decision. I want to be done. for me, the hardest person to deal with is an analytical person, because I have to consciously think about this over and over again. Okay, don't rush through this. They need more facts to get them comfortable. And I have to be really, really aware of what I'm saying and what I'm doing, or I will just rush through it. And what happens? They hang up. They ultimately say no. That's how I know I didn't do my job right, is they say no. That's probably what most people do wrong, is they don't recognize what they are. And yes, we know we're analytical, but they don't consciously think about that and how that's coming across to the other party during that interaction. So
I find most women are not analytical. And when I'm with a woman, I adjust better.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's gender specific. I mean, everybody has their opinion. Here, picture it this way, DC. I have 42 participants on this call, and I have to try and get this information across to people that are all 4 personality types. So that's why earlier I asked everybody if they were willing to turn their videos on, because like Joe Shapiro can't see him, Marcus can't see him, Kayla can't see him, Richard can't see him, Craig can't see him. Part of my job is to get those cues, right? But if I can't see, if I can't see who I'm talking to and they're not interacting back and forth with me, it's really damn hard. Like, presenting on a Zoom call is one of the biggest pain in the asses there is, because you don't get that interaction. So let's compare that to calling somebody. Right. And that's my point. Like, how many speakers would come on here and say, this is a pain in the ass talking to you guys? This guy. But like, Pete knows it, and anybody that does any speaking or teaching knows it. Like, when you don't have those cues, what you just said, I don't get those cues if I can't see you or hear you. I don't know if you're enjoying what I'm talking about or not. I don't know if I'm getting through to you or not. I certainly don't know what personality I'm speaking to if I'm looking at somebody's name on a screen. That's what you have to try and get through, and then figure out, number one, how do I figure out who I'm dealing with, and how do I come across to hit their hot buttons, not your hot buttons, right? That's what you got to work on. Okay.
But also, Derek, you told us if we're naked, we're not supposed to put our video on. So hey, you know,
well, Liz,
you narrowed the market right there.
Liz,
I think you misunderstood him. I think you misunderstood.
Yes. We could go down a rabbit trail here. I don't think I should. It's being recorded.
It happens often here, so just know.
Oh, I believe it. Liz, I still don't know what you look like. You got curlers and binoculars. I have no idea what you look like.
It's the best I could do tonight, my friend.
Fantastic.
So what did you want me to do as a volunteer?
So I was going to ask you, so what types of deals have you done, first of all?
A couple of rentals and a couple of flips. I did one subject to, and I was at negotiating it, but luckily they said, well, so what do we have to do? Where do we sign?
Okay. Where do you get your leads from?
Mostly, well, I think it's split evenly from wholesalers and from neighbors. Once I'm in the neighborhood doing a renovation, they all come over and see, and they really like my work. And then I usually get another house on that street, or a relative of that street. I talk with them.
How do you fund your deals?
All different ways: private money, hard money, refinance.
Okay, so you raise private money?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So
with family who told me I was doing everything wrong and that I shouldn't be in real estate, now they all want to invest.
What a shame, isn't it? Everybody has some haters when they start, and then they show a little success, and now they all want to be part of it. Okay, so hypothetical, if you had somebody that called you, or you called them, but called you out of the blue, and they had a house for sale that was retail price, What's your price points down there? 250, 300?
Well, if you want something to fix, it better be under 2.
No, like retail, after repair value.
Oh, after repair, yeah, 250.
250, okay. So if, let me see who I can pick on here. So if Robert Raskin calls you up and says, I saw your ad, I saw your marketing material, whatever, DC, I want you to buy my house. I want $250,000 for it. It needs no repairs. How do you handle that call?
I would say that in order to give him a price, I would have to see the house.
Okay, great. Well,
actually get angry with me, but then they showed me the house because they wanted the number.
Okay. So Robert's willing to show you the house. It's worth 250. That's what the realtors told him it was worth. And he just redid the whole thing. It's all brand new paint, flooring, beautiful house. So it's worth 250. He wants 250. There's no upside. What do you do with that lead?
You mean I can't make any money on the house is what you're saying. And if he did all the work, I probably won't like it. But I would ask him if he knows anyone else, or I would ask him if, if he would be willing to take payments over time, because that is the only way that we can afford a house like this.
Nope, he wants to sell for all cash. He is, I mean, look at him. He is an all cash guy.
I don't know. I usually don't take those deals.
Okay. So might you ask Robert what he's going to do with the cash when he sells his house? Would you feel comfortable asking him that?
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah, I've done that before. It's like, well, what do you need the cash for? What do you want the cash for? What are you going to spend it on? And have you considered taxes and that kind of thing? I've asked people that.
Okay, so what if he says that he's going to have $200,000 cash from the sale of that property? What do you do then?
So he's going to net 200.
Yeah, he's going to have. He owes 50 grand on it. He's going to put 200,000 in his pocket after the sale.
What are you going to use the 200,000 for? Are you going to spend it all in one place?
What's it to you? Why do you care? I'm kind of being Robert right now because he left me, but
well, because we may be able to work something out if we can help you get what you want.
Work something out like what? You told me you couldn't buy my house. Here's where I'm going with this, DC. I'll let you off the hook a little bit.
Thanks.
So many people
you have to learn this stuff, you know.
No, I'm just, that's why I wanted somebody that had a few deals under their belt. But so I get this question all the time. People are saying, well, all I get are leads on retail houses and I can't buy these houses. Okay. But you told me you raise private money, right? So why not, again, we're doing everything intentionally. Why not take this conversation to, I'm not going to be able to buy your house, Robert. Your best bet to get the most money in your pocket is to list it with a realtor. I'm more than happy to refer you to one. I've got a good friend of mine that's a realtor if you need one. But I already, through discovery, through our conversations, I already found out that he only owes 50,000 on it, which means he's going to have an extra couple $100,000 sitting around. I then take that conversation to Robert. What do you invest in? I mean, do you enjoy the stock market? What kind of returns do you like getting? I steer that conversation. As soon as I know I'm not buying that house, I'm not letting that lead die. I am now taking that conversation to, what do you do for investments? And oh, by the way, I fund all of my deals. When I buy these houses all cash, I fund those with private investors. And to me, I don't ever tell them what I pay my private investors right away. I want to discover what they deem is a decent interest rate, because some people will get scared if you tell them, well, I'll give you 10%. If they're getting 1%, they may look at it and say, you know, this is too good to be true and you're a scam. And some people will come back and say, gosh, if I could get 5% return, I'd be all over that. But the whole point is, again, we're doing everything intentionally. Take that lead and turn it into a possible private investor.
So if I give you a 5% return, then you'd be willing to invest with me.
Me? No, I don't.
You want 5%?
I don't get out of bed for 5%.
Hypothetically, your person.
No, my family has expensive tastes. No, they don't. But anyways, the point is, everybody, you know, spends money marketing and trying to get leads to come in, and then they don't continue the conversation to the point where there is a possibility of getting this private investor out of it. Okay. And getting referrals, like what you said was good. Do they know anybody else that has a house for sale? All good things. But this last year alone, I'd have to check in with Jeff if he's still on his call or not. I think we had 2 or 3 of our retail leads that we were able to convert into investors into our fund. And, you know, one guy, he told me, yep, it's a $306,000 sale price, and it was free and clear. So we continued that conversation. That was in April of last year. And he said, I expect to have it sold and moved out by August 1st. And I said, would it be okay if I follow up with you, ask permission? Would it be okay if I follow up with you on August 1st? He said, yeah, absolutely. I put a calendar reminder in my phone. August 1st, I called him. He said, we close in 3 days. I'd love to, you know, get more information on what you do. We happen to have a fund that we can pool money into for our lending company. Sent him all of our fund documents, continued the conversation. And within 3 weeks, he became an investor for $300,000-ish. All because I asked him a couple questions, right? So these are just things that people don't do. And it doesn't have to be hard.
I've done that, but not any money that way.
Uh-oh, Jeff, my business partner, has unmuted himself. Please disregard any negative comments about me. Go ahead, Jeff.
That same investor recently gave us another $500,000.
Wow.
Just before Christmas. So he's up to 800,000 that we have his money placed.
I have a deal for him.
No, you don't have a deal for him. We had a deal for him. So
that's your own, right?
Yeah. So any questions on that? Thank you, DC. Thank you for letting me pick on you a little bit. I appreciate it.
Thanks
Derek,
for the tips. Help us learn.
Derek, this is Phil. Got a question.
Yes.
Earlier, you talked a little bit about never using the word seller financing, but you I forget how you said something about would they take payments. I'm wondering if you would go into a lot more depth on when you want to do seller financing deals, how you approach that, how that discussion goes, how you handle that whole thing.
I really don't want to, but thanks for asking, Phil. Next question. I'm just kidding, Phil. God, you guys got to lighten up a little bit here. Good God. Phil, it really comes down to the flow of the conversation, right? But when you use softer words like make payments over time, they may then ask, what does that look like, right? So at that point, I may go into more details. Well, there could be a land contract. There could be a note and a mortgage. There could be a lease and an option. We go into more specifics then, but to me, the word seller finance is what scares them because they don't necessarily understand it. Am I answering your question, Phil, or is it, I guess?
You are. It's in the advertising for this event, it talked about how you'd be talking about negotiating when you want to do seller financing, owner financing. And that's an area of real interest to me. So I'm really interested in all you have to say about the topic.
So it all starts in your pitch or your discussion with the seller, right? Like every property that I negotiate on has at least 2, if not 3 possibilities of offers. The first one is I'm going to pay you all cash. The second one is I would take over your payments if you have payments. The third one is I can make payments to you over time. The fourth one is I can control your property either with a lease or an option or both. So either way, I'm always giving people multiple scenarios, or I'm sorry, multiple solutions. So I feel like if you're looking for specific seller financing transactions and you're marketing, you know, I see people that market on social media or direct mail or whatever. It says, you know, we're looking for seller financing, or we're looking for subject to, or we're looking to take over payments. You don't find these deals by advertising them. You build these deals by having conversations with people. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So every lead that comes in my mind, has a possibility of being a seller finance transaction. If I lead the conversation correctly and I ask the right questions and I listen to their answers, every deal has that possibility. If I don't have the cash or I don't want to buy cash, I still make them a cash offer. It's going to be so undesirable that if they do take it, it's still okay. But there's deals where, I'll give you an example. I have a property that the landlord called me. I'm trying to look this up here. 16th Avenue. Landlord called me up and said, I've owned this property for 6 years. I don't want to be a landlord anymore. He did not raise his rents. He did not want the person to move out because they always paid on time. And at the end of the day, he wasn't making any money. He was cash flowing $325 a month. His rents were $650 a month, should have been $950. And the house needed about $15,000 worth of improvements that he didn't want to do. But he owned the property free and clear. Okay. So he had bought this property. I'm going to generalize these numbers a little bit, but he bought the property for $56,000. And owned it for 6 years. My cash offer to him was $34,000 cash, or $56,000 at 5% interest, or $70,000 at 0 interest. All of which he didn't like the cash, which I didn't want to buy it cash. So I made that offer low enough where he wouldn't like it. Okay. He doesn't know that, but internally, that's what I did. The $55,000 at 5% interest, by the time he paid taxes on the interest portion of that payment, he wasn't really keeping as much money as if he took the $70,000 at 0 interest. Does this make sense to you so far?
Yes, it does.
Okay. No matter which offer he accepted, I was happy. It honestly, if he offered the 30 or took the 34,000 cash, I was happy. If he took the 56,000 at 5% interest, I was happy. He ultimately took the 70,000 at 0% interest, and the payment structure was all equal to what he was cash flowing currently without having the joys of management. There's a guy in the middle of my screen named Peter Fortunato who taught me all this stuff. It was just how I presented it to him that, you know, made him comfortable with it. So he ultimately took the $70,000 offer. We took that and brought in a financial friend to partner with their IRA, and they put up the money to rehab the property, which was another negotiation. Then we put a person in the property on a lease option, which was another negotiation. And currently that property is closing on February 15th. So I bought it for 70,000, zero interest. We stuck 15,000 into it. I cash flowed it for 2 years and 4 months at about $200 a month. And it's set to close at $120,000 on February 15th. So everybody in that whole scenario, from the guy I bought it from, to the person I lease optioned it to the person that my financial friend whose IRA wanted a good return on their money, to us at the end, was 4 different negotiations, all of them win, 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 win. But I didn't find that deal. I made that deal through conversations and discovery and constructed it. Right?
Okay.
Excuse me. So Phil, it really comes down to letting people know who you are, what you do, and then solving for X. You know, in this case, this guy didn't need a chunk of money, nor did he want a chunk of money. He wanted the cash flow. But everybody else that he had talked to, because he talked to other investors or flippers, everybody else just stuck him with a low cash offer. And my cash offer was lower than theirs because he told me what their cash offers were, but mine was lower on purpose. I wanted the payments and he wanted the payments. So what do you think I did about a week and a half ago, Phil?
You rejoiced about how it worked out, but beyond that, I don't know.
No, Phil, I did not rejoice about how it worked out, but I appreciate the silence, and you ended the silence. Did you guys all notice that silence was deafening, and I would not come back on until he said something? No, Phil, I called him up. I called this gentleman up, and I said, "Great news! I've got this property. It's selling. It's closing February 15th. You've got whatever, $62,000, whatever the number is, coming back to you. Do you want the chunk of money, or would you like to continue getting payments?"
I see, yes.
And oh, by the way, we pay 9% return to our investors in our real estate fund, which I had already talked to him about in the past. And you've been getting 0% for the last 2 years and 4 months. Would you like to go from 0 to 9%? Of which he's very happy to continue that conversation, right? So we've paid him as agreed for the last 2 years and 4 months. We've built up that, history, right? That credit history with this guy. So he's very, very, very excited about talking about investing into our fund. And I don't know what else he has, but as my partner came on earlier and said, we had a guy at 300, it's now at 800. That's how it starts. But it's by asking the questions. Does that help you out, Phil?
Yes, that is helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Derek.
Yeah, Joe.
Sorry. I just want to kind of follow up on that with the mechanics a little bit, because you said some very interesting things that I just wanted to unpack a little bit. The terms that you offered them, I like the way you presented the deal. With the 5%, was that a typical amortization schedule? And was the 70 with 0 interest, was that something that you said, I will pay you $70,000 even if I sell this thing tomorrow?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the $70,000 is what I'm committing to, which is why I wouldn't sell it the next day, because at that time, it needed $15,000 worth of work. But the after repair value was about, I don't know, 105. Mm-hmm. It wasn't huge. We've been able to obviously have some appreciation over the last couple of years, and my lease option contract with my buyer has built-in appreciation. but I think Pete would be much better at answering this question than I am from a structure standpoint. Let's just say that it was structured at 70,000 and I wanted to sell it the next day. How could I do that? We could have a contract that said, I essentially get a prepayment instead of a penalty, a prepayment, a predetermined payoff if I pay early. So if I pay you within 12 months, instead of 70,000, my payoff is 60,000 or something along those lines.
Well, sure. I understand that, all that can be negotiated. I just was kind of curious, was the 55 with 5% just a standard amortization schedule?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then the 70, which incents him to sell for more, but at a zero interest, you're committing to 70,000, hanging on to it. So I get that, as far as how you structured that. I was just interested in one other aspect, is that he would make less after the taxes. How did you kind of present that piece to make him see that, 5% interest after his taxes and all that kind of stuff just wasn't attractive?
Well, I plant the seed and then I have them talk to their own accountants, because I don't know their tax scenario. I don't know, nor do I want to a certain degree. But if he's in an average tax bracket, the interest portion that he's collecting is going to be an ordinary income tax. We have state income tax in Wisconsin as well. And, versus a long-term capital gain, his basis was 55,000 or 56,000. Now he's going to go up to 70,000. So we literally sat down. He was a fairly analytical thinker. So we sat down and we wrote out the numbers and, took out a loan calculator and factored it out. And he ended up keeping more money in his pocket by taking the 70,000 at zero interest. Pete, hit us with Pete.
What you just set up, I was sure you were going to say you gave him the $70,000 secured by a different property. So then when you sold it for that 120, you'd have kept that money and continued to benefit by the zero and reinvested the money on your own.
I didn't, Pete, because I didn't call you and do it right.
Well, it's not right or wrong, but putting it somewhere else, if you knew you were going to sell the property, was the better thing to do, because then you sell the property and you get the 120 paid 70, but you continue to pay the 70 with no interest.
Yeah, and in this case, and in a lot of cases, this is just my opinion, they're comfortable with the collateral because they already own the collateral. If I had gone and said, well, let's keep this property free and clear and I'll give you collateral against something else, maybe I could talk them into it, maybe not.
That's right.
Typically, they're pretty happy with the collateral because they already own the property. We've been successful, though, several times now in these seller finance transactions where when it comes time to pay them off, we turn them into private investors for the future. And we've done that because now, again, we've built up our history.
There's all kinds of reasons that people want and accept collateral. And so a very common one is to take their own property because they know it, exactly as Derek said. But other people have moved away and a property in the town where they now live is close to them. They like that. Other times, and what I've used a lot with people I don't know, is a property I'm offering them a mortgage at 50% of value on it. And so there's so much equity there, whereas at $70,000, there was no equity if I got run over by a car. But that's just a discussion to have because the collateral is yet another part of the numbers. You got quantity and quality, and the quality can give you another benefit there.
Right. Yep. See, Pete can explain it way better than I can.
Derek, I came a little late to the meeting, but are you doing rentals right now, or what's your typical scenario? Rent to own, or mostly subject to, or what are you doing mostly?
Our scenario has changed a lot in the last couple of years. Our lending company has become our main focus. So when I put together a real estate transaction, I am either wholesaling that property, if it's a cash transaction, typically going to wholesale it to one of our borrowers. So we we get the property, we get a wholesale fee, we make money off the loan as well. If I'm doing a creative structure, anything that's payments over time or sub 2, those I'm usually going to hold on to and then put a lease option tenant into them. And I'm kind of a scorned landlord. I dealt with that for many, many years. And I like the lease option model because the way I do it, it's usually a 2 to 3 year model and my management is minimal. We've kind of gotten to a point where we travel a lot with our other ventures, our masterminds that we host and everything else. So we're usually on the road about every 3rd week somewhere in the country or out of the country. And I just don't like tenants and toilets anymore. But, you know, I love paper, but I also love having the assets because paper has no tax deductions whatsoever. And recently now we're getting into a little bit of light commercial. But I will look at just about anything, Becky.
So I've done things, you know, some of these gurus will say, oh, start in your neighborhood, but also go somewhere where you've been before. Like when I first was doing real estate investing, I started out in 2003. I was up in New England, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania. And then I went as far as 8 hours away towards my college. And I really feel like I had some partners out there that I went to college with, but they didn't want to put their own skin in the game as much as I had. And, you know, I had back then this mentality that everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to be a real estate investor. I'm going to bring all my friends along with me. And the reality is they didn't want to put skin in the game. So when the market turned in 2005 to 2008, it kind of dumped everything. And now I'm starting up again. And I'm finding it interesting because I kind of am holding back from going long distance again because I don't know, there seems to be better deals in other areas, i.e. $100,000 houses versus here in this area, right? It's very hard to find something that is 100,000, although Adrian's probably doing good with the mobile homes and stuff like that, right? So, but the whole idea of being able to never meet somebody face to face and do everything over the phone is a whole nother level of confidence and rapport. That's interesting to me. There's someone I've been talking to recently. He's never been to Michigan. All his deals are in Michigan. He started out doing notes up there and he's built a whole team of contractors and realtors and stuff, and everything's long distance, and he's never actually been to that state. So that's a part of the advertising that was interesting to me, is that you do so much over the phone. And like Susan was saying, you know, without watching the little nuances, without even being on Zoom and seeing people's faces and their reactions and stuff. So what do you, is it just that you're reading those personalities, or do you feel like it's like, is it something in you that, I don't know, like, I don't even know how to ask the question. Is it something in you that you feel like you have the kind of personality that can do it kind of sight unseen compared to most people?
You know, it's trust but verify, right? I trust people. I take them at their word, but then I still need boots on the ground in that location that somebody I truly trust that can verify information. I've done deals out of state. I've done deals in Florida. In fact, Florida, I mean, I love you guys down there, but if I never buy another property in Florida, I'll be okay with it, just because that was what buried me in 2007. And it wasn't Florida. It was my own stupidity and lack of knowledge, but I still hold it against you all in Florida. But, here's a great example. I did a deal in Texas right as COVID was hitting. And this guy needed to sell his house fast. He reached out to us through our marketing in Green Bay, Wisconsin, because he had a brother that lived in Green Bay. So it was an internet lead that came in, and we ended up striking a deal. He wanted, these numbers are going to be a little off, but he wanted like $160,000 for the property. He owed $105,000. And doing a quick search, the property was worth $230. Suburb of Houston, Texas. And I said, well, my cash offer doesn't get you what you need. It just doesn't. And I said, I would be willing to lease the property, put an option in place, secure my option by a deed of trust. And we agreed to 5 months. I had 5 months to exercise my option. And he told me he was going to back down to Mexico because he had family there that needed help. And, the numbers looked fine. So I said, okay, great. I will bring you a $10,000 cashier's check for the option. I will fly down there. And so we did all this over the phone. Okay. And I said, I will fly down there in 6 days, which was January 6th, because we inked the deal on New Year's Eve prior to COVID. So what was that? New Year's Eve, 2018? 19. And the next day was 2020, right? I flew down there January 6th, 2020, because the title company I found to do the title search said they'd have the title search done on January 6th. So I booked a flight, went down there, landed, and as I was in the air, I got a message from his daughter that said, Dad got arrested. Okay. What does that mean? And she said, well, he had a warrant out for some traffic violations, and my uncle is going to come and take you to the jail. Dad can sign papers at the jail. Okay. So this whole trust but verify was kind of coming into play at this point, right? I had to go and see the property because Hurricane Harvey had flooded a lot of that part of Texas. I'd never done a deal in Texas before, and I had to make sure this house actually existed and there wasn't flood damage. So I'll get to the point. I got there and the title search showed so many liens and judgments. It was unbelievable. I was livid. But this guy had a very common name. And so as myself and my business partner and a title company were sorting through everything, and we figured out that most of these judgments and liens were not this person. And we did move forward with the deal. But in the end, I took possession of the property with the lease, put an option in place, secured it with a deed of trust, went to the jail, had a notary at the jail, take it back to him and get it signed. But in the end, he was running to Mexico because he was arrested for sexual assault of a minor. Had absolutely nothing to do with helping friends in Mexico. And had he gotten across the border, my little lease option deal could have been really devastating because I had power of attorney, but if I can't prove that he's alive, my power of attorney does nothing for me. So it could have turned ugly, right? So how's that story important? Well, it's a fun story, number one. But number two, if you're going to do something outside of your area, you got to have somebody there that you can trust. You just have to. I didn't have anybody in that area that I could trust. I got really lucky. I got referred to a real estate agent. She was a blessing. And then COVID hit. So the end result, we made a little bit of money on that deal, not nearly as much as we would have wanted to, but we were happy to come out on the positive side once COVID hit. So Becky, I would hone your skills and I wouldn't be afraid to do it, but make sure you've got somebody that you trust in those other markets would be my suggestion.
Thanks.
I have a question that someone sent me directly to me to ask you. The question is, what are some top things you say to get someone to consider taking a property subject to their first mortgage? When you're on the phone with them and they've called you and they've said they have this property and that's a possibility. What do you say? Well,
Liz, it's going to really depend on the circumstances. if that property is in default, if they're behind on their mortgage, or if they're current, that I think makes a big difference. Why are they actually selling it? Is there a divorce situation? Are they relocating because of a job, which is a very common case? All of those things to me make a difference in answering your question or somebody's question.
Okay. Okay, then let's pick it though. Then just so give somebody an idea. So let's say they are being relocated. Let's say they, I don't know, which one would be better for you? If they're not late on their payments or they're late on their payments, which one? Which way?
Either way.
Either way.
Let's say that. Let's do them both ways, Liz. Let's say they're late on their payments, and they have to relocate. And I think this is going to be a really fun 12 to 24 months, by the way, in this realm, because there is a lot of people that stopped making their payments during COVID, and they're all banking on the fact that the lenders are going to give them forbearances, and we don't know that to be a fact yet. So if there are people that are behind 6 months or 12 months on their mortgage payment and they have no equity in the property, because of course they now went and got the Pete's favorite government loans in the whole wide world, right? And put nothing down or 3.5% down, take out appreciation, they really don't have enough equity to pay an agent to sell their properties quickly. And now that's different in every market, but in my market, we're not going up 10% a month like some areas might be, So if I've got somebody that now has to sell their property quickly, they've owned it for a year, and maybe they gained a little bit of equity, but the reality is they can't afford to pay an agent without coming out of pocket, and now they're behind on their payments. It's a pretty easy conversation, because I'm going to come in and catch up their payments and make their payments for them on their behalf, which is very important how you phrase that. I'm making your payments for you on your loan, right? You're not assuming their payments. You're not taking over the payment. You're making their payment for them on their loan. Okay. Which over time, if they are behind, is going to fix their credit with on-time payments. So that's the real sales pitch, is how it's going to benefit them. For me, at least in the upper Midwest, I can still cash flow those properties if they've got a locked in interest rate at 3.5% or 3%. I can typically cash flow those properties. And now there's different perspectives on taking a property subject to. I mean, I know Pete, for one, does not like taking properties subject to when it's an institution. Some of us do, some of us don't. I don't mind it, but I would say that anybody that takes a property over subject to, whether it's institutional or private, should have the ability to pay that off in the event that it gets called due. If you don't have that ability to pay it off or sell it quickly, fire sale it and pay it off, I don't think you should be proposing it to a homeowner. That's just my own opinion. So it's not that hard of a pitch, Liz, because they're going to have to come out of pocket to sell that property in those scenarios. If they have equity and they're behind on their mortgage, perhaps, they start getting a payment on a second mortgage or something along those lines for their equity. But I don't see that scenario happen all that often. Most of the time, the leads that I get are the people that have almost zero equity and they're behind in their payments for one reason or another. And now they're either relocating or something is forcing them to sell that property. Does that help?
They haven't replied, but I will say I liked your phrasing of I'm making your payments for you on your loan. I wrote that down. Sometimes it's just the little golden nuggets of what somebody says that can make all the difference. And I like the way you phrased that. That was nice. I've bought quite a few subject to and I've never phrased it like that, but something similar, but I like that very much. Thank you for that. That was good.
Well, to me, it kind of helps them really gather quickly that you're not assuming their loan, because we're not. And I believe in full disclosure. So I go into a lot of details when it comes to this. I talk about their due on sale clause. I talk about, what happens if my business partner and I die in a fiery car crash, who's going to make the payments. And I use graphic examples like that because it could happen. Like, they have to know that we're going to make that payment no matter what. Okay. We all know and have heard stories about unscrupulous people with terrible morals and ethics that just go and take advantage of somebody and buy their property sub 2, and then the markets turn and they walk away. And all they did was make things worse for that homeowner. So I just, like I said earlier, I would never propose a subject to if I didn't have the ability to make it right or pay it off. And the other scenario is if they're not in default, they may have some equity. Here's a quick deal that I did. It was a property that had a mortgage of about $65,000. She wanted $100,000 for the property, and it didn't need much. It just needed a couple $1,000 in paint and carpet, just a freshening up. So that one, we took sub 2, her $65,000 mortgage, gave her $15,000 in cash, and then she carried back a second mortgage at 0% interest. That would have been, let's see, 65 plus 80. I think I bought it for 95 total. So she carried back a second mortgage for roughly $15,000 at 0% interest. So that was another one where, we kind of did a hybrid, Liz. We gave her some cash, some on a note, and took over the rest. And we justified it, with the projected cash flow from a renter. And ultimately we ended up selling that one after a couple of years. I think we sold that for $118,000. So we cash flowed a couple $100 a month for 2 years, and then cleared about $16,000, $17,000 on the tail end.
I have a question on this first scenario. What you mentioned about when you take the person's payment for them, you make it not take the payment, but you're making the payments for them on their behalf in their mortgage. How do you go about, and from your perspective, how do you go about and I guess writing the paperwork up that says something like that? Because I know someone that got offered that, and they were the owner was in that situation. They were kind of pre-foreclosure. They were able to turn it around eventually, thank goodness. But then they were approached, and that was the option that was given to them. And they're like, I'm sorry, I'm already in the red. I'm trying to save our neck. And they were leery about that whole scenario about coming in, making my mortgage payments for me on my behalf. How do you, if you're the person coming to me, how do you ease my concerns regarding that? Thank you.
Well, to clarify, Rosemary, when I tell them that I'm making their payments for them on their loan, that doesn't mean we're not buying the property. So we're still buying the property and getting the deed. We're buying it in a trust. I just really want them to know that we're not assuming their loan. Like that's right. Why the verbiage is the way it is.
No, and I understand that. Because
Okay.
And the other thing is there's certain loans that you cannot assume it. Like, for example, as a signing agent, I get to see that as a VA loan, you can't just assume a loan. And there's some mortgages that have that where you have to have permission from the lender and blah, blah, blah. But I just want, like, when I get to that point, if I decide to offer, depending on the situation, of course, the same option, how do you go about, and you just kind of answered it, you put it in the trust, that way it's everything is thank you. That answered my question.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as deal structuring and how to do the mechanics of it, that's a little bit beyond the discussion tonight, but again, that's why you guys are blessed to have Pete and John Schaub and you know, these guys in your backyard that, you know, that's what they're experts at. Some of us schmucks have to get on an airplane every time we want to come down and get around great people, and you guys have them, you know, an hour away. So please don't,
and you
don't
get to hang out in Florida where it's nice and warm.
Absolutely. But why would I want to? It's, you know, currently down to 3 degrees now. So it's perfect. It's beautiful.
Derek, one thing, if you're doing any of the subject twos, just make sure you got a very good disclosure. So when years later, when those people have passed away and their kids are upset, or they get elderly and you're accused of taking advantage of an elderly person, you really want a good disclosure. So showing what you disclosed and what you did. And
Absolutely.
then if it's institutional, as soon as you can get rid of the institution, get rid of the institution.
Thank you,
Pete,
guys. Appreciate that.
Pete, I love that text message.
So Derek, Ginger Ginger, can you ask him your question that you have over here in the chat? That's a good question.
Hi. Okay, well, Pete kind of mentioned a little bit, but so what if the owner or the previous owner dies, and you took all the mortgage, you have it in a trust and all that, making all the payments and everything is good. So what happened if if the previous owner dies or the seller?
Most people believe you don't need good credit in heaven.
Oh, I can't answer it any better than Pete.
Good. That's fair. That's fair enough. So we just continue to write it on, and we're good.
So, I mean, I'm assuming your concern is the lender finds out that the person passed away and they call a loan due. Is that your concern?
Would that be a possibility? Will the bank be notified that the borrower on their account passed away?
I mean, it really depends on the family. It depends on if there's a probate. Could it happen? Sure. You got to read the mortgage language. And so this is my big pet peeve, Ginger, is people will go and take over somebody's payments and take over their property subject to, and never read the note and never read the mortgage. Like, don't take responsibility for somebody's note and mortgage without reading and understanding what you're taking responsibility for. Okay, so if there's language in there that says, upon death, this note becomes due, and where would that be a possibility? A reverse mortgage. So if you go and buy somebody's property that has a reverse mortgage on it and they pass away, yeah, you can bet your ass the lender's coming for that property. That was their intention from day one. So read the note, read the mortgage, know what you're getting into. And then I'll go back to my previous comment. Don't ever take something subject to that you can't pay off. So if there was a circumstance where the lender found out that the property or the person was deceased and they had the right to call the loan due, and they did call the loan due, that you can pay it off or liquidate it and pay it off, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Derek, we have a couple of other quick questions that came in real quick, and then I have one that we'll do in the after the meeting. But so one question is, can you just quickly repeat one more time your pitch of where you were stating the 3 options of how you typically buy properties to the potential seller?
Well, Liz, we buy properties in several different ways. All cash is going to be typically our lowest offer. If that doesn't work for you, we can take over your debt payments if you have debt. If you don't have debt, we can make payments to you over time. Or in some cases, we actually lease the property and buy it at a future date. That usually comes into play if you're trying to offset capital gains taxes or other estate planning purposes. The end.
Very good. There you go. So, And I just want to comment on the if the seller dies and I've taken over the property. I have had that happen, but it's only happened once so far that I know of. The others, I don't know if they're alive or not. But what I do know is that in my experience, I just kept making the payments and just wait and see what happened, and nothing did. So I'm still making some of those payments. So I don't know. I mean, I can't say that happens everywhere, but that's how that was on the one that I know they passed away. Okay, other quick question here is kind of within the same thing. How do you set it up, Derek, where let's say you've taken a property subject to, so that first mortgage is in place. Let's say you know, God forbid you get into a fiery crash wreck, okay, in your history. How have you set your world up to make sure that those payments continue and everything else continues in life for your world?
Well, between myself and my business partner, Jeff, we've got things structured with, you know, our estate plan has life insurance. Our estate plan has, you know, other people that'll step in and run our business. Some of it will get liquidated. It would depend if I died or if Jeff died on what that exit strategy would be. If we both died together, our spouses, unless they happen to be with us, they know what to do to liquidate. And the life insurance is the key, I think. If you're not able to, you know, financially pay these debts off, I would go and get life insurance that would cover those debts in the event of that incident, because then the life insurance pays that debt off, and your beneficiaries still have the assets, and they can do whatever they want with the assets. So we're a little different because Jeff and I run several businesses, and they're all very intertwined, and you know, it's a little messier than what most people have. So the simple answer is get enough life insurance to cover your debts, and it's easy.
You know, that actually brought up something, I can't remember who said this at one of our meetings, but they've done subject twos, and they've actually taken out life insurance on the sellers, so that if the seller does die, then that loan is paid off. I don't know how that worked or how that was, but I remember them saying that now that you say it about your partner.
That's a great question for an insurance expert, but you have to have. Now, I'm not going to speak to it because I'll go down a rabbit trail.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's a question that could be out there that they might look into stuff. Who knows?
Yeah. Talk to a decent life insurance agent about that, because that could be a little sketchy. That could be me taking out life insurance on you, Liz, and Ginger. You got a comment on that?
Yes, actually, I did try to get a life insurance on this seller, and it went through all right. The seller had to authorize me as me controlling the policy. Yeah. And the life insurance people, they were fine with it. They approved it, and they were good. We went through, the lab work and all that, and everything was good. But the quote was a little too high for me, and I thought it wouldn't benefit with cash flow. So, but I was very close on taking it, and I would have gotten, a nice chunk. So I kind of, balanced it out. Was it going to be worth it in the long run or not? So I didn't take it. I didn't move forward with it, but it was possible.
Yeah, and Ginger brings up something I didn't even really consider, is the whole health, the medical check. I mean, some of these people that you may be taking over subject to, I mean, you never know. They could have, they could be heavy smokers, or they could be meth addicts, or there's so many different things that I would have a hard time, even though I'm a pretty good negotiator, I have a pretty hard time asking a homeowner to go through all that stuff just to insure me, versus me going and getting my own insurance policy on myself at a higher death benefit to cover those debts. So, but it sounds like it's possible if you can get them to play along.
So there may be some wiggle room in there to look at anyway. So now it's 9:43. So what I'm going to do, if it's okay with you guys, we're going to sort of do that. What I said earlier, we're going to wrap it up as far as end the meeting, but not really end it. We're going to continue, okay? Because I did have another question come in, and Derek said he would stay afterward with us for a little bit so we could pick his brain. And one of the questions has to do with interest rates, 0% interest rate, and some things like that that might be of real interest to you guys. So please stay on. There also was a burning question that several people have asked me, which has nothing to do with Derek, okay? But we have to answer it before the night's over. And that is, what does Pete Fortunato's t-shirt say that he's wearing tonight? So Pete, what does it say on your t-shirt? You've got everybody wanting to know. Well, you're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you.
It says bravery, not obedience.
Ah, there you go. A lot of them could
Tomorrow's
only see
t-shirt says, "I will not comply."
Well, that makes total sense.
I've got another t-shirt that says, "Your mask is less effective than your president."
I love those t-shirts. Can I have them?
See, I knew it was going to be important. All they could see, because maybe it was the way you were sitting or whatever, Pete, all they could see is, what is it, disobedience? It says bravery. On there.
Bravery.
That's all they could see. Yeah, they couldn't see the bravery part. They only saw the disobedience. So they were dying to know, what was that saying?
Liz, do you mind if I tell everybody about my conference a little bit coming up in Orlando?
I was just going to ask you, because several folks on here, Derek, have been in the past. They have gone to the, what was it called? I'm sorry, I just went blank on the
Captains of the Deal Cruise with Mr. Peter Fortunato.
There you go, the cruise.
And Bill Cook and Dyke Spotiford. And yeah, so the short version, and this is not a sales pitch to anybody, but so when Pete and Bill and Dykes were running the conference on the cruise ship, my partner Jeff and I were on 7 of those 8 cruises. It's wow. What we really attest our success to is the network that we built and the relationships and the knowledge that came from Pete and Dykes and partially Bill. Can
you explain though what the cruise was? Because some people don't even know that it existed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just what was it?
Absolutely. So it was structured to where there was about 4 or 5 hours of conference time each day, you know, lectures and discussion. And then the rest of the time was set aside for networking and, you know, hanging out, getting to know each other, talking about deals, talking about strategies. And then it came to the point where, which was, I don't know, what, 2 years ago, I guess, in March, was the last captain's cruise. And so we wanted to keep it going. The intention was to, you know, continue on a cruise ship. That little illness that's been going around for a while screwed that up for us. So we are having what's now called the Generations of Wealth Voyage conference is in Orlando on February 21st through the 24th or 25th. Coming up here in your backyard. And it's structured the same way, even though it's going to be on land. We're going to have conference from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. And then the afternoon is open to go and network and hang out with each other. And then we'll come back in the evenings for more of an interactive town hall session. I've got 11 speakers total. 10 of them are fantastic. Number 11 is Bill Cook. And it's a non-sales event. It's always been a non-sales event. That's the way, you know, those guys did it back then, and we want to continue that as well. So it's at the Margaritaville Resort in Orlando, and everything is on the website that I think somebody just put in the chat, which is awesome, but it's simply gowvoyage.com. And it really is us trying to give back and keep that network alive as much as possible. I will tell you, full disclosure, planning a conference is way more work than I ever anticipated. And I'm absolutely looking forward to the event. I can't wait to be there and host it. But leading up to it sucks, just being real with y'all. But we'd love to have anybody that, you know, from the area that wants to come in. I mean, love to have you. It's a $600 price point for a 5-day conference. I mean, really, I'm not bullshitting you. we're losing money on this deal, but it's just for us to give back and hang out and you know, I came on this deal tonight to talk with all of you with you know, I wanted to mention it, but that's not why I'm here. I really wanted to spend the time. I appreciate Adrian and Liz inviting me, and you know, to get to know some of you more. If you are so inclined to come to our conference, we'd love to have you.
I'm going to throw in.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Adrian. Yeah, I was going to ask you to please share.
It's technically Kissimmee, and that does matter to people that are in the Lakeland area, because that means we don't have to go through Orlando. So that makes it a little bit closer, just so people realize that. And I was going to throw in, because I know a decent amount of the speakers, and I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, but some of them I don't believe speak anymore to such an intimate group, because you're not having it to be huge, and some of them do not speak to this intimate of a group, which is really cool, which I'm excited about.
Well, and I'll tell you, this part is every one of them is coming on their own dime, and they're not allowed to sell from the stage, and it's because they want to give back as much as, and that's what I learned from Pete and Dykes and Bill all those years. You know, it wasn't about making money, and it's about the relationships. So I've asked a lot of my friends, you know, that are speakers, and these are, I will say, these are more advanced strategies. Not that if you're brand new, you wouldn't get something out of it, but we are talking about stuff that's a little more advanced and next level, but it's not really about the topics as much as it is about the networking. The last thing I'll say about it, the reason we call it the Generations of Wealth, is I took my daughter on the last two Captains of the Deal cruises when she was 11 and 12 years old. She's currently 15. To have her there, and sat down with Pete one night at dinner, and Pete had his conversation with her, his little capitalism talk for children, which was awesome. You know, I want and encourage people to bring their children to this conference, preferably 10 and older. Screaming babies are not really ideal, but we want people to bring their kids to this conference, not to learn the topics, not to sit through the, you know, that type of stuff, but to network with other families and to know that there's, you know, like my kids right now, there's about 8 kids across the country that they stay in touch with on a regular basis, whose parents are freaks like us, who don't conform to the regular 9 to 5, who, you know, pick up and take a month-long trip like we did this last summer, right? Just to go and see the country and hang out. The goal of this is if they can start to make friends with other families whose parents are freaks like us and build a network in their teenage years and early 20s compared to the network that I built in my late 30s and early 40s, I just feel like it gives them such a leg up. Doesn't matter if they go into real estate, or that's not the point. It's that they get to see a different way than what they're being taught at school every day. So check it all out on the website if you're interested. You know, all the descriptions, everything's there of the speakers and everything. But I encourage you to bring your families. My 3 kids will be there. 4, 12, and 15 or something like, no, 4, 11, and 15 are the ages of my kids. They will be there. There's several other families that are going to be there. That's my sales pitch, Liz. That's all I got.
Man, I tell you what,
this is coming up.
People have said for years, Oh, I'm sorry, Walter, go ahead. Sorry.
This is coming up fairly soon. When does the room block end?
Yesterday. Honestly, yesterday.
Okay. Because the website says soon.
Yeah, February 2nd. Liz didn't change the meeting for me, so I couldn't do it in time. But but Walter, if it is anybody that's on this call, reach out to me directly, and I will figure out a way to hopefully be able to still get a discount on the rooms. Just reach out. Liz, can you put my contact information in the chat for me?
What would you like me to put there? Yes.
You got my cell phone number and my email address?
Yes. Is that okay to put out there for you?
Yeah, put them both out there. That's fine.
And Derek, I'm assuming you need to reach out soon for the room discount, not 3 days before.
Correct. Yeah.
Tracy's not going to be happy with you if you get someone 3 days before.
Yeah, I can't guarantee anything on the rooms. The conference fee is separate from the rooms, so it's two separate deals. You'll see that on the website. But yeah, ultimately,
I'm going and staying for that networking part you said. For one, we all have friends. Like I'm missing Ultimate tomorrow, which I'm sad because I have friends all in town.
Yeah,
but I'm going for the friends and the networking and the after hours just as much as the speakers. And I could drive back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're staying the whole time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm leaving my brother's wedding and then going. So I'll still have family in town.
That's what I like to hear. Priorities. That's the way it should be, Adrian.
I'm giving them all your number when they're pissed with me.
I don't care. That's what caller ID is for, Adrian. You know that. So... But thanks for letting me announce that, Liz. I appreciate it. And like I said, I'd love to see you.
We want to support that. Thank you so much for trying to carry on that event, because it has meant so much to so many people over the years. And we're just lucky that you're doing that. So thank you. I know it's hard work. It's very hard work to put on any of these kind of events. People, don't often realize that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
And Ginger's asking if any of that's going to be on Zoom at all, since she's from out of state, or is it all in person? That's it? Okay. All right. Very good.
Ginger,
and listen, Derek,
Ginger, I'm from out of state too.
Yeah, I'm getting over COVID right now, and I've had a bad cough, and I've had a couple other elements too. My husband is working nights during that month, and my kids are in school, and it's like, okay, I really want to go to this meeting.
Yeah.
But I have all these things in the way, so I figure if you had it online, I know you need the network, and that's really important. So yeah. Okay, I guess maybe next time. But yeah, I'm gonna miss it. I went to Captains of the Deal, and that's how I found this new family.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'll be honest with you, Ginger, there's two reasons it's not going to be on Zoom. Number one, I suck at tech, and I don't want anything to do with it. But number two is a lot of the stuff we talk about, it's not recorded for a reason. It's that, and you've been on the captain's cruise, so you know what I'm talking about. That's where, the inner secrets come out, and it's not there for the masses for a reason. So
that's exactly what. That's such a great teaser. That's the bomb of the evening right there, is that you're going to hear things that you will never hear or see and recorded anywhere. I know that's what our hot topics are all about. We stop recording this meeting, in fact, right now when we end it, and then it's open season for afterward. And there's just there's a freedom to that, and people appreciate they can share, everything. So Absolutely. Thank you on that. And listen, just for everybody to know, we will be sending a link out for a copy of this recording tonight to everyone, and it'll have the information also about the Generations of Wealth Voyage. So I'll put a link in that so they can just quickly link and go to that. But we have it over there in the chat if you need it. So Derek, thank you so much for everything you shared tonight. This has been fantastic. I thank you. Adrian and I were so happy when you agreed to be with us tonight. And we just thank you. So everybody, please give him a round of virtual applause and appreciation. Yes, for this.
Well,
and don't forget, everybody, please stay on. I do want to wrap it up by just saying, this part of the meeting anyway, to wrap it up by just saying that we so appreciate you guys letting us come into your home tonight to share these things with you. And finally, in the true spirit of PCREA's motto of investors helping investors, I know you felt that tonight. Please seek out others to support, make a difference in someone's life. And again, thank you. Be safe. God bless. And we are officially wrapped up. Okay.
Thanks, Derek. See you soon.
Thank you, Pete.